All right, y'all. Welcome to All Politics are Local, America's number one political hip hop radio talk show. Y'all know if it's Friday, y'all know it's time for All Politics are Local. So listen, y'all. Y'all know it is the last Friday of the month. It's an extra Friday for us, so we're gonna, have a number of different conversations tonight, not only about some of the things that are going on in the community, but we're also going to talk to some folks about some issues that are taking place in the country, and then of course later this evening we'll talk hip hop. But Zaid, if you want to give them the rundown, let them know what's up at 6, 7, 7:30, and then of course 8:30.
Well, very briefly, we're looking forward to having a discussion and then an update on the hurtful and haunting case of Andrew Washington. Andrew was a young man who was killed by the Jersey City police a few weeks ago in a mental health crisis, and from all accounts on the community side, it was handled absolutely wrong. In a wrong way, and now we have some footage that comes out that corroborates a lot of that. We're looking forward to talking with some very strong folks in Andrew's family. His aunt Toni has been particularly strong in trying to keep their family together and moving forward and trying to get justice for Andrew, and some of the local organizers that have been very helpful in moving the whole question there in Jersey City. There's going to be a speak out at the next Jersey City Council meeting. We just got word on the 12th and a contemplated action on the 14th. Looking forward to that conversation, and they should be on any moment. Bill Fletcher, who's a veteran labor organizer, is going to talk about all things labor. We've seen or seeing a healthy upsurge in labor protests and labor movement expression, some that we haven't seen in some time on a number of fronts. And Bill is somebody that can help us make some larger sense of that. Of course, the most recent is the auto workers being on strike uh, throughout the country. Then finally, and that was a brother I've been trying to get on for a little while, been trying to connect with for a while, Kamau Franklin, uh, people's attorney, and he's also with Black Power Media, another strong outpost for things real and radical and strong. Um, and now has a new organizing project, or relatively new organizing project, called Community Movement Builders, and he's been very much out front in terms of this whole thing that's happening in Atlanta with this massive monstrosity that they're literally killing the people and locking people up over, called Cop City, right? So we're gonna have a conversation with Kamau about that. And there's some interesting things coming up in the land of hip hop, so I'm interested to see what where that conversation is going to go. I have some things I'd love to raise that's caught me completely off guard, that I hope we have a few minutes to get into. So that's the run of the show. From as far as I know, unless we get some new wrinkles and some new surprises, which happens sometimes here on All Politics are Local.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. So while we wait for the guests, I was, talking with Larry a little earlier today, and so uh, obviously one of the biggest pieces of news that happened this week, of course, I mean, along with I guess the Republican debate, if you were paying attention, but they were talking about Senator Mendez, in
Are
the
the chickens coming home to roost for
yeah,
Senator? But then that's my question. You go ahead. I interrupt you.
and him being indicted for the second time. And so, one of the things I think that everybody is asking is that did he not learn his lesson the first time, right? And the reason I guess people are saying that is because that and of course Senator Mendez is a friend of the show, right? But
Oh, yeah,
I'm
y'all had
saying
him on some time ago. That's right. I
he
forgot about that.
he actually came to
He
the
ain't no
studio.
friend of mine. I got to be real.
Yeah, well, he came to the studio, hung out with us, right? There was no limit on what we could ask him, right? No one. No one said, uh, that what we couldn't ask him. So we didn't have any of those limitations. But I guess the question I'm asking, Zaid, did he and he's a smart man. He's a lawyer as well. Did he not know that these people were still following him and watching him and waiting for any little thing that he did to try and bring him down? Did he not know that? And
I
now, and according to Larry, now he's getting Republican support.
Yeah, that doesn't surprise me because he represents the right wing of the Republican Party.
I didn't think he would. I didn't
So
think he
he
would do that.
represents the right wing of the Democratic Party, rather. Excuse me. He represents the right wing of the Democratic Party, and the Democratic Party has made a major shift to the right since the Reagan days. I mean, Bill Clinton was a turn to the right for the Democratic Party, right? And that's why we can't get our kids, excited, as energized as we need to about voting because they see these tired moves that these dumbass Democrats keep making. And pardon me for ranting like that. The great Principal Baruti Kafele just checked in. You
Yeah,
know,
yeah,
I mean, just a few weeks ago, literally, just like I said, Smooth ain't no friend of mine. You mentioned Larry. Larry ran against Corey for Senate. I said, man, you should have ran against Menendez because he was vulnerable then, and you know, and he's very different. He's very different. He represents some stuff that we definitely need to get rid of.
right,
And to be sure, his whole monopolization, him and Florida Democrats and Republicans on the whole question of this backwoods blockade and stranglehold on Cuba that is as old as you are, is straight ridiculous at this point. I mean, and Gail Walker, who's a dear comrade and has done some hugely important Cuban solidarity work, taking over and standing on the shoulders of her father, the late great Reverend Lucius Walker, literally tried to have a respectable, discussion / meeting at his office. His office had her arrested.
what?
And she ain't stole nothing. All right. She ain't got no gold bar stashed nowhere. She ain't tried to buy nothing, illegal, none of that. Trying to have a democratic discussion with the top lead person in her district.
Right.
Had her arrested. I almost had her come on today too, but we've been back and forth with her scheduling issues because she's really a full tilt in what she's doing. So I mean, there's a reason why so those folks had to leave Cuba because they were abusive when they were there.
Yeah. Yeah.
They were racist when they were there. They were fascists when they were there, and they were criminals when they were there. It was anything but democratic.
Yeah. Right? Yeah.
So if you was talking about the good old days, well, what were the good old days?
Right.
Good for you. Good for who? Right. So he's vulnerable, and I hope whoever takes his place is certainly to the left of where he was.
Right.
It's not a part of the right wing of the Democratic Party. And the Demo says he's running.
Yeah.
Right. And I hope this particular run gets a whole lot more traction than that last one because, there is no and now he does have a son. I don't know where his son is in the politics of the Democratic Party machine, right? But his baggage is obvious, and half of the party is saying that Smooth need to step down, and he's being defiant, and would not surprise me if his reactionary soul turned to the reactionary as you suggested and winds up with the Republican Party because people look, they're corny like that.
Well, Larry said that he had said that he doesn't plan to resign. So, and why should he? I mean, if you innocent, why should you resign?
If
right? If you're innocent,
that's a big
right?
if.
I mean, at this particular point, those are all allegations, right? So they would
That's
have
the lawyer in Riley talking now. Uh-huh.
you know, I mean, they would have to prove it. Hey, listen, I most certainly don't have any evidence to prove that this man is guilty. So, I don't know. Hey,
I
look,
hope it's the case of the chickens coming home to roost.
brother, I hear you, but hey, listen, I tell you during the pandemic, I think a lot of people had money in their house though. You know what I mean? You know, I don't know. I don't know if they had half a million, but I know a lot of people had money in their house.
Negroes wouldn't walk around with no gold bars in their damn house.
I don't know. It's like since the pandemic, everybody's been doing some strange stuff.
Uh-huh. Well,
You know.
he has been consistently right wing for the longest, and he's had a cloud over his head of corruption for the longest. And that's one of
Mhm.
the things about gangsters in white privilege. When they come together, they can get reckless because that privilege can cloud your judgment. Corruption will cloud your judgment. You know, and we used to say when we were in the streets many years ago, everybody takes a fall, and perhaps the time has come for Big Daddy Bob to take his.
Mm, mm. Well, one thing we shall see what happens. Now, let me ask you questions. Did you see the Republican debate?
No, I didn't. I didn't. I was traveling. I heard some news clips of it that they're trying to figure out who's going. The big question is I watched a little of CNN when I was traveling. I had to go up to Rhode Island for Mumia Abu Jamal.
Right.
Um, I have always felt that this is basically a contest to see who's going to be uh, Trump's running mate. Whoever comes in first is somebody
Mm,
that Trump likely make his running mate,
mm,
right? And it's ironic that that Christie is trying to emerge as the one that's trying to distinguish himself from Trump. When him and Trump were tight,
right.
but when Christie got sick, right, he had to distinguish himself from the madness of the Donald, and the thing that really that's wild about that, for all of Trump's cavalier stuff about uh, not taking the whole vaccination question serious. When he got sick, he had the best.
Right. Right.
He had the best, and it took a long time in this jive, privileged, racist, capitalist market to make what he had available to the public.
Yep. Yep.
See,
And not only that, remember he got sick early on,
yeah, he sure did. He
right?
sure did.
Before they even figured out what this thing was, and so whatever cocktail they gave him, right? And remember, he didn't. I don't even know if he took a shot. I think that whatever they gave him was a mixture of stuff that he was taking in order to knock out whatever was in the body. You
They
know,
had, they had, and I forget the name of it. In fact, I was one of my comrades whose wife is a doctor. You know, informed us of just what it is.
right,
Right? It's a strong medicinal treatment. Right? Um, they had it. They just didn't make it readily available because
right,
this particular comrade of mine, he got sick, but
right,
because his wife's a doctor, she knew what to ask for. It
right,
wasn't publicly, available the way it should have been when that pandemic first hit. We
right,
probably could save a lot more lives, and that's a whole another line of investigation and discussion and whatnot that needs to be examined. As we're looking at a new wave, a new variation on this disease, and how we going to manage that, and who is making what vaccine available, and is that going to be as equitably or as accessible as it was when the pandemic first hit, because free for a lot of folks. Or we are now in a situation where only those who are insured can pay for it through them having insurance will get it. So there's a whole lot of questions that still have to be raised in terms of how this whole thing is going down and is going to go down, right? And then we should be turning the volume up, asking the hard questions in the name of trying to save lives in our community.
Yeah, yeah. Well, absolutely. Well, I didn't get a chance to see the Republican debate either, but I did hear that Donald Trump say that these guys are actually auditioning, right, for a job.
For the number 2 spot for the vice presidency.
Because he said that he doesn't see any of them being a challenger to him, right? But that they are auditioning for a job. And he asked the question. He said, "Do y'all see any of these people out here I should be looking to hire?" Because he's definitely not looking at Pence again, because Pence decided to run against him, but I guess he's looking at the rest of them, you know. And Christie is trying to be witty. He's not even being serious, right? Making these crazy statements about him. He said they're not something about if Donald Trump doesn't certain
Show up, you'll call him Donald Duck. Yeah, I heard that.
Donald I'm like, come on, man, really? Like this is supposed to be a serious campaign, a serious debate, and you making silly jokes. Now, come on, like, do we really have time for that?
I think Big Chris was hoping that was something that would have been catchy, and apparently it didn't catch the way he wanted it,
right?
Too. But this, that's a wild crew right there. That's a wild crew, right? That I was talking to Mama Baraka there. I don't know. Some of we spent a couple minutes laughing about Lincoln. This is nowhere near your great grandfather's Republican Party. These are some crazy ass folks.
Yeah.
These are some crazy ass folks. And this whole question of, many years ago, the Black Panther Party back in 1969, which was the bloodiest year of the Black Panther Party's existence. We lost 28 Panthers that year to police violence, right? Called for a national united front against fascism, right?
But you said how many? 28?
28. That's the year that Bunchy Carter and whatnot got killed in January, and it all ended with Fred and Mark getting killed in December. 28 within that.
What year was that?
69.
69. Okay.
That was the beginning of the Nixon era when we had another criminal in the White House. Stuff was covert and overt coming at the party and coming at our movement. But we need to really, that's it for me, and that's something that Mama Mina and I were talking about today. The whole question of a united front now against fascism is as important as ever. We've got a Supreme Court that Trump stacked with some really backwards players, right? And are willing to do some things. Affirmative action as we knew it is not at all what it was. Roe v. Wade was overturned, and they're not finished. Other stuff is going to come up, and this particular Supreme Court is backwards as hell, and it's one of those other dimensions of why I would say voting is important for all of its limitations, but why it's still important, folks got to really Mina kept saying, do folks know what time it is? Right? I hope folks do know what time it is. We have to really out organize these fools, because they are hell bent on taking us back to a place and time in some ways that those of our folks who are considerably younger than us really have no objective connection with, right? As a child of the 60s, some of us have very real memories about what that meant,
right?
Trying to go south, what that meant, with the police, on Bloomfield Avenue in Newark, what that meant. We can talk about, what those days look like. Some of us can remember that, right? Because it was a part of our upbringing. It's something that we had to grow up and watch the movement and ultimately be brought into the movement to change that and to fight that, and I think a lot of our elders, are heartbroken to see that, we're back in this space again.
Right.
We're back in this space again, and short of, our folks burning the damn country down, like we had to periodically, right? These are folks that you really can't talk to. You can't talk to these folks. These folks are telling us that slavery was good for us.
Yeah.
You can't have a conversation with them.
Yeah.
This is a wild time. This is a time to study, train, and fight, right? And to really to understand what all of that means. And I'm really looking forward to this discussion with my little brother Kamau Franklin, because he's come through some of those kind of things that we have that I'm alluding to, and it's got a whole fresh wing of organizing that he's trying to do with or formation that he's trying to develop. But this this ain't no time to be no bystanders and talking stuff is not organizing.
Right.
Calling people's name is not organizing.
Right.
Even if it's not organizing. Organizing is hard work. Organizing means trying to figure out how you can work with people who may not be where you're at in your politics, right? But if they're close enough to help move a place where we can't go or do not want to go, how to do those kind of things. It's not easy.
Right.
It's easy to call names in the post, right? But to actually bring people together, across a spectrum of beliefs, over some core things and whatnot, and keeping them together long enough to make some noise and to make some real change. It's another kind of ball game, I say that for this, looking back at the epic summer of 2020, where we had mass protests all over the country, largest protest summer in the history of the country, right? And it was multiracial. It's black, brown, and white, right? In some places, young white folks were the majority, taking leadership from our community. It's rare. It's something you hardly ever see. And taking leadership from young women in our community, because that summer was overwhelmingly well organized by young black and brown women, right? And that's something I'm very proud to see and was very proud of. But the organize, see, there's mobilization, then there's organization.
That's right.
And that was a big summer for mobilization. Right. It remains to be seen if enough were able to sustain the organizing that that we need now to make this critical moment right now with these crazy right wingers trying to rally around Trump and turn back the hands of time. I want to be optimistic, because as a revolutionary, you should be. You don't just lead with love and hope. You actually believe that we can do this.
Right.
I mean, Trump did lose.
Right.
In 2020.
Right.
For all the tricks in the game that they were trying to pull and all the dirt that they played, he should go to jail.
Yeah. Yeah.
For voter interference. I mean, he was on. I mean, it's a matter of record that the guy is on the telephone with the Secretary of State of Georgia. Give us 12,000 votes.
Right. Right. Right.
I mean, how more cavalier in your disregard for the law and voting rights can you be?
Right.
Right. And why is that not the heart of the question? So this is no time for folks to be sidelined and just selling wolf tickets. This is a very serious time in this country. We have somebody that just joined us. Good to see you, Toni. How are you?
I'm well. How are you? Hello.
Yeah. Everybody, this is Toni Erwin. This is the aunt of Andrew Washington, a case that we're all very upset about. In Jersey City, there's been some serious protests about that in Jersey City. Toni and some of her immediate family have been exceptionally strong and dignified in how they've carried themselves in the midst of this ordeal. And this is the kind of ordeal that often breaks families, right? And I'm so proud to see her strength, her dignity, and her resilience. And there's a lot going on that we certainly can talk about. And Toni, I don't know if you're going to bring anybody on with you. I shared this also with Nevin Perkins and Pamela Johnson, because I know they have been important to this, and they're in some spaces that we need to keep moving forward. right? So now I ask you that general, how are you? That was a big how are you? That was a real open question because we know how that can be, right? So welcome to the show, welcome to the space.
Thank you for
Uh,
having me.
yeah, and then let's talk about what you need to talk about. Let's start first. Let's do this because this is one of the most important things that we need to do in spaces, in media spaces that we control, in situations like this. In other spaces and other media spaces, usually when these kind of things happen, the last thing you really learn about is just who the person was
Right.
and why that person's life mattered, right? And as a consequence, to those who continue to do what they continue to treat us as if our lives do not matter. We
Right.
can't do that in those spaces that we control. So let's start. Let's just start this conversation about you telling our community about your nephew Andrew.
Okay. Thank you. My nephew, and born Andrew Jerome Washington III, he was affectionately known from us as Drew, and he called himself Drew Cubed. That was his name. Um, he was a highly intelligent young man, very charismatic. Um, he was a lover of people, and people were drawn to him. He he had a style and just a certain sense of style and flair that made him always stand out to others. Um, the girls loved him. He had so many that were just attracted to him. He was a lover of sports. Basketball was his main sport that he loved. He played in high school. He lived for March Madness, coming to the house, us all hanging out and watching the games. He had a strong passion for the games and for different players. Uh, he just was a well-rounded person, very intelligent. Sometimes people didn't understand him because Drew kind of spoke over their heads, and they really didn't understand him and who he was because he would be always talking a little bit over their head, and
Mm.
they didn't get it. He gave everyone a nickname. Like if he met you, he'd talk to you for a little while and see who you were. He had a neighbor whose name was Walter, so he always called him Walter Payton. But his neighbor was one who knew nothing about football at all, so he never understood why he was like Walter Payton. And it's funny, I saw his neighbor yesterday walking his dog, and he came to hug me, and he's saying how sorry he was because he was there that day. And he said, "Do you know, I looked up Walter Payton and I didn't realize he was such a phenomenal football player." And I was like, "Yeah." Then he said, "I didn't realize Drew gave me that name." And I'm like, "Wow, I didn't know he was such a phenomenal player." I was like, "Yeah, he was." He's like, "Wow." But he was like excited because he realized why Drew called him Walter Payton, and it made him happy. But he was that kind of person and just loved family and interacting with the family.
Mm, mm. And I want everybody to realize that over your right shoulder is a picture of Drew. So for folks who have not
Yeah.
seen him, that's the handsome young man you're talking about.
Hmm.
Yeah. So let's move forward. We lost him like we've lost several others
Yeah.
because he was going through a moment. He was going through a mental health crisis and has a history of some mental health challenges. Right. Why don't you tell us about that, and then we can unpack out how that should have been handled.
Yes. Um, in the late 90s, Drew started having signs of, behaviors that just didn't seem right. And then he went to the, like, we were trying to figure out what was going on, and the behaviors he was having. He ended up going into, we did call a crisis unit. And back then I had a friend who worked in the mental health department
Mm,
from college. And I knew about them because she worked there. And I was telling my sister, so they had him evaluated, and then they found out that he was suffering from bipolar.
mhm,
And um, So he was diagnosed with that. He would go in and out of the hospital quite often because he would have episodes until they kind of got his medications better. Because at first they were trying different things that didn't seem to work. And then he got better medications. Um, I'll fast forward to April, in April of 2012. That was another time when Drew was going through a bipolar episode, and he was he was in crisis. But this time his counselor was with him because she would come to his house and they would help him because it was a program that he was in. And Drew didn't want to let her in the house. And, he was going through another bipolar episode. So she had called the crisis unit, and she was a counselor, and she was saying, I need help. I want to get him in the hospital to get him help and get service. And that time too, the police came in and they forced their way into his home like they did this time, and they shot him in his left arm. And it had destroyed his nerves and everything. He had to have surgery so he could even use his hand because he had very little use of that left arm and hand. And so he always, like, we would talk about it a little bit with him about what happened. And he would say, I never want to be in that place because they arrested him. They put him in jail. They treated him like a criminal. And, I had to go to his psychiatrist to get documentation about what kind of person he was. And, he wasn't a threat to anyone. So they did release him, but then they put him on parole as if he did something wrong. And we were struggling with that. And he would go to parole back and forth. Every so many months, he would have to show up and, prove to them, I don't know what they wanted him to prove, that, to keep his apartment, to keep the program that he was in. He had to stay in these programs. I'm not really sure how or why they had him on parole, but they were giving him all these restrictions on parole. And then that was that was 11 years or so ago. But then Drew has been fine. He was going through this last time having mental illness. I noticed in July things were changing, but I didn't want to call the crisis unit because we know the history. We know what they do. And I called in other counties. I called in Essex County. I talked to friends that worked in the mental health industry. Unfortunately, the friend that I had before, she moved out of the country. She moved to South Africa, actually. So I couldn't reach out to her. So I had other people, just talking to people, trying to find out what other recourse we have than calling our medical center crisis unit. But there was no one else. I even called our councilman, Gilmore. He was like, no, the program, he said, is the medical center. And they said, but it's been like 11 years now. So it's been some time. Things might be a little different. And that's, what we were told. So still trying not to call, but then maybe about like around the 22nd, 23rd, I couldn't find Drew. I was calling all over. I called him, like no one's seen him. Usually he's around. He comes by my house. He hangs out with my son. He lives right down the street from my mom and my sister. So I'm like, did you guys see Drew? No. Then I was calling, and for 3 days that went on. I even called the crisis unit to see if they seen him, had him, if he was in the hospital. No one has seen or heard from him. So around on the 26th, I'm walking past his house because I had went there, banging on the door, trying to see if he, was there. And I'm going, I don't remember if the lights were on the night before or off. And I was just trying to figure out what was going on. And I couldn't get in the building because, all the doors were locked. But then going home, I'm walking past, and I see him on the porch. I'm going, Drew, how come you didn't answer me? He was sitting there smoking a cigarette. My niece then called the crisis unit again. because we were afraid he would go missing. Because their minds just tell them to do things, and they're very impulsive. So he gets impulsive. He went to Trinidad one time. He loved Trinidad, so he decided he was going to stay. And his friends that he went with, they came back and was like, yo, Drew didn't want to get on the plane with us. And we're like, y'all love him. So we went through a thing. My sister and my niece had to go call the embassy. And then we had friends who had relatives that were in Trinidad that helped get him on the plane and get him to the embassy to get him back here.
Wow.
Yeah. So those are some of the incidents we had. So when he was going through this time, my niece called on the 26th. The police came and the ambulance, because our crisis unit, the Jersey City crisis unit, the whole month I was calling, they would never have anyone available immediately to come out. They had other cases they would tell us before him. So we can't come right out, but he's on our list. And then I'm going, okay, what does that mean? He's on your list. So they wouldn't come out. And they said, but have him with you when, he comes. So one day my son, him were hanging out, and my son had him in the car. So I'm calling them. Well, my son has them outside the house and they're in the car. Can you send someone now? And he's like, and they're like, we don't have anyone. Again, they don't have anyone again. So we're trying to wait. And he stayed in the car with my son for about 4 hours outside his house. And then finally he's like, yo, man, I'm going in. I'm tired of sitting here. Because we were trying to keep my son with them. So when they did show up, my son was there, and the crisis unit didn't come. Yeah. And that started about 1:30. They called me at 6 o'clock that evening and go, okay, now we have somebody to come out. I'm like, he's back in the house now. He's not out, So we just kept going back and forth with them. And then on the 26th, my niece called when he was sitting on the porch after he just showed back up. The police came. They said, he seems more agitated because we're here than being a harm to himself or anyone else. So, we're going to leave. But if you need us, we'll come back. Then we'll come back tomorrow. Whatever you need us, we'll come back. And I'm like, yeah, but we know he needs to go because he's, experiencing bipolar. He said, yeah, he is talking, saying some things that, a little bizarre, but, we don't see any reason why we should take him or have him in the ambulance. I said, but he's outside. Before it was, if he's in the house, you can't get him, but now he's outside on the porch and we're right here. And the ambulance was there. But they said, no, but he's more agitated because we're around. And those were their words. Like, he's agitated because we're here with him. He wouldn't come with me because he was like, why are you calling the cops on me? I said, I didn't call him. I'm coming here to check on you. And, and he because he was in that state. And then, after, they left, I left, and he was just sitting on his porch smoking a cigarette, and he said he just sat there, and I guess he went in the home. And then the next day, the same kind of scenario happened, and the neighbor said she hears him, the downstairs neighbor hears him banging on something, and then it would get very quiet in the house. So she's like, I'm afraid he may be hurting himself. I don't know what it is. I don't know if he he threw himself on the floor, he dropped something on the floor. So we were concerned again. So this is when we're like trying to get in the house. He wouldn't let us in, like calling him, he wouldn't answer. So we called the crisis unit again. And then again, they said, we don't have anyone to come out, but we can send the EMS and the police. And so they did. And then it just escalated to the craziness that happened after. And one of the police officers was one that appeared that came the day before. But when we were out there, we were telling about his mental history, how he's afraid, especially of the police, because, he had gotten shot before. And the other guy said, oh, no, it's okay. We were here yesterday. They knew his history. He had a well-documented history. And medical center.
Yes. And that's what I'm trying to draw out. Yes.
He had a very well-documented history. So all of that was there. He was in medical center 2 weeks prior, where he called the crisis unit. He called the police himself because he said he kept seeing ghosts and he was afraid. and they
And that's
took him.
footage
He saw a ghost.
from the police saying that to him, to each other.
No, this was before Drew.
No, I'm following you.
Yeah,
But what I'm
he
saying is
the
that the
police.
footage from
Yeah.
what happened confirms what you're saying.
Yes. That's why they said it, because he told them that, and the last time when they came, that he saw a ghost, and he went with them. But then when the hospital released him, we were telling him he's not ready. It's too soon. Because they don't give him. They didn't give him his usual medications that he takes from his doctor. We gave him the psychiatrist information, and he always goes to Jersey City Medical Center. That's where he's always been. He had his surgery for his arm when he got shot. He's always been there, so they do have a well-documented history of his bipolar and schizophrenia. They had his doctor. I gave them the doctor's number and information to get the medications that the doctor prescribed, but they released him, and then they wouldn't let us. Like, we didn't get information because they said, his rights. That we can't get information on him unless he says we can have the information, or he releases us to see for his medical records. So Drew would say no, and then when they told him he can go home, all he cared about was coming home, and he knew how to keep himself calm so he can come home. And we're like, but he's not ready. We can tell. He would talk a little bit to himself. He would talk to himself, like having conversations with himself, and you're like, he's just not ready. He's just not ready. And right after, like a day after he got home, the behavior started happening again. And that's when maybe 4 days later he went missing. And then we're like, oh, we don't know where he is. But the police, and they have been called numerous times, the crisis unit. So they were aware of Drew, because I called them for a whole month. Telling them what was going on, what he was doing, and why he needed service. But they're going, well, he's not that much of a threat. So I guess he had to be doing something severe for them to come out, or them to try to help him. But they said, as long as he's not hurting anyone or hurting himself, we can't take him in, or we can't do anything. And I'm like, but we asked for a wellness check, somebody from the crisis center, a counselor, to come to talk to him, or try to, kind of evaluate him. And
right. Give a real assessment. Yeah, a real professional assessment. Exactly.
Yes. But that never happened.
Toni, let me ask you a question. So this happened, you said, on the 26th of what month?
August.
So this was just last month. And this crisis center, is that a part of the police department?
No, it's a part of the hospital.
Yeah, Jersey City Medical Center.
And so does the crisis center normally call the police department to come with them? Why was the police there at all?
That's what the crisis center transferred us to the EMS, because they were saying you have to have an EMS person come out. And when the EMS person comes out, they come out with a policeman.
And you've noticed that every time you've ever called them, the police always showed up with the EMS?
They did on the 26th. And then the next day when they shot him was on the 27th.
I guess the point, the reason I'm asking you that, every time that you've ever called them, and for this particular matter, did the police always show up, or was it just this particular time that they showed up with?
No, they showed up.
So that's
both times they showed up. Yes, but in Jersey City, a lot of times, the police come sometimes with the EMS. Or some medical situation.
And so on the 26th, the EMS shows up, the police shows up. Now, is it normal for the police to take the lead, or is it normal for EMS to take the lead?
I don't know. But the crisis unit, we were asking for them to
Right.
show up.
Right.
The
Right.
crisis unit, the medical crisis unit, because that's who I call. And when you look at the leaflet, when you're going through a mental health crisis, this is the number they give us to call.
Mhm. Mhm. There's a service that's supposed to be in place for that.
Right.
Right.
One of the spaces I want to try and bring you to, Tony, at some point sooner than later. We had a horrible situation show up like this in Patterson recently. The case of a young man named Najee Seabrooks.
Yeah.
And Najee Seabrooks was actually a trained person in what we call community-based violence intervention and interruption.
Yeah.
Right? Was a bright voice in his community, been through some things and has come out on the other side, and has been doing some really good things. Slipped into a mental health crisis, and Patterson at St. Joseph's Medical Center has a very well developed emergency crisis team. Right, the very outfit that he worked for, the Patterson Healing Collective, that's built into their training. They do it. Right. And one of the things that happened with this young man, similar to what happened with Andrew, is that as the police came, then the police came and withdrew. You know, crisis situations take time to de-escalate.
Yes.
But when these folks don't want to take time,
Hmm.
something tragic happens. And that happened in both of these cases, right? They didn't want to take the time that was needed to de-escalate
Yes.
that, bring the person down that's excited and agitated down to where they can talk, be brought out, and gotten help, right?
Right.
So,
Hmm.
I'm saying, and what was tragic about Najee's case is that there were resources there, and the police blocked them. And that's another fight that we're having with respect to his case. Here, these resources need some real attention. They're not the deliverables that they should be. They're not as developed as they should be. They're not responsive the way they should be. And there needs an infusion of some resources with some real, integrity in their oversight to make sure that they properly develop. And the thing that makes this doubly infuriating is that just with Andrew's case alone illustrates that weakness.
Right.
It illustrates that weakness. So there's some places that we certainly, are suggesting that we should go with Andrew's case and beyond the obvious places, because
Right.
it's not enough that we have a police culture in this country that has no problems killing black men and women and children as it is. Uh, but when something like this that can be managed, and then they just refuse to do it, that's
Right.
another kind of problem, and we need to be fighting for those other things that can help for these outcomes to come different. I was
Well, we
very
have,
proud. I was very proud of how the block turned out when we had the vigil,
yeah.
right, and how that became a beginning of the community coming out and whatnot. I know we have some things coming up. I was supposed to be in action on the 14th. There's a city council meeting on the 12th. But I want you to take a minute and just talk about who showed up for you and your family at the vigil and since then.
Um, for the individual, we had Councilman Gilmore. He has come out every time we have called for him. Actually, we had right after the body cam footage came out, we had a meeting in the Mount Pisgah Church, and we were there, going over some things over that and preparing to do a press release. And even Councilman Gilmore came that evening, and that same day, he found out his brother was killed. So I just commend him. He has supported us tremendously through this.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and we've had Nan, Reverend Al Sharpton did his eulogy. Um, um, We've had Pop would come out. The NCAP came out. We had so many organizations. Some New Jersey Together, the Jersey City branch came out and has supported us. A lot of them supported us at City Hall when we did the march, and they all marched with us.
Yeah.
From Andrew's home to the city council, to the city hall, into the city council meeting, and sat and all spoke about Drew and the situation. Because there was the city council in Jersey City had approved a program back in 2022 that could have saved his life.
Right.
That was that they didn't implement.
Exactly.
And it was already put in play, and they never put that in practice. I'm sorry.
That's what I wanted to get at, right? Mm-hmm. That's a space that needs really, in addition to the accountability questions that we definitely need to be raising about the officers involved, about the mayor's behavior in all of this, right? The failure was also in the institution that was supposed to be able to respond, and something was there to improve that.
Yes.
And again, and it wasn't implemented as it should have been. And so there's some real accountability that needs to happen with respect to that. Yeah.
Right, because it was called the 911 Mental Health Crisis Intervention Program that the City Council approved more than a year ago. Mm-hmm. Elected officials and public safety advocates had approved this back in 2020. About 2022. And it was right after the wake of George Floyd's death at the hands of the police officers in 2020. So there was a program that the city council, first of all, they knew that this was a problem. Mm-hmm. They knew how the police showed up was a problem. So the city council did put in an ordinance to have a program, and they adapted it. They signed it in, but for some reason, the protocols were not implemented into the police department. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Somewhere, someone dropped the ball, and they didn't follow through. Mm-hmm. And that was one of the things we were in City Hall when we went to City Hall talking about what happened to this program. Why didn't the city show up? The police officers show up as how the city council had adapted this plan. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So the plan and the program was approved. They said funding was set aside for it, but for whatever reason,
implementation.
Yes.
That's the language that my little sister Pamela Johnson used at the vigil. The failure of implementation. And that's something that happens. Local government, state government, federal government. It's one thing to pass a law, to sign a bill. It's another thing to make something actually, functional with respect to how it's supposed to be developed and used. And that's clearly what did not happen here, right? A few minutes that we have left. Tell us, what's coming up. Tell us about the city council meeting, the meeting on the 14th. I know there was a discussion because I helped lead the discussion around the question of what's some folks may want to do on October 22nd. October 22nd is a National Day of Action against Police Brutality. Tell us about where you're actually at now and what your demands are now and what you want to see happen.
So right now we are planning a mass meeting October 14th out Mount Pisgah Church at 1 p.m. in Jersey City. The meeting is to start mobilizing people and giving them action plans. So what the things we're going to move forward with, especially for October 22nd, we're having another march. This march is going to start at the Public Safety Building and go to the West District Precinct Police Department. But those were the officers that had responded to Drew's home. Mm-hmm. And then we're going to, then after the rally would go to Lincoln Park via Communipaw Avenue, and then that's where we would end our rally at Lincoln Park.
Okay. So Jersey City is good. Now let me just do some background for you. I want you to appreciate it, and I'm glad to hear about that October 22nd piece, because I want y'all to figure out how we can leverage that in this way. October 22nd, before COVID, and especially, this is we're some 25 or 6 years in with this National Day of Action that we do every year. It started in New York and it became a national move in the early 2000s, right? But the National Day of Action is a way to help local communities with cases like Drew's, right? Break out of the confines of being limited to local stories. That the local story should become a part of the larger national story, right?
Yes.
And these local stories around the country, it's a moment where they can all lift up their stories in a very national way, right? So that's something I want folks to have in mind. And as we get closer, of course, we're going to help you with that, right? So I'm glad to hear that. Let me just say this too, because one of the persons who was at the vigil, and I had to have a little talk with daughter, right, was your Assemblywoman Angela McKnight, a bright young woman, right, with a lot of potential and whatnot. But Angela, for folks who do not know, is the lead sponsor of the Civilian Complaint Review Board bill that we have been pushing for to create strong oversight, to really put some accountability measures in place.
Yes.
And anybody that wants them. And Angela didn't even mention it, at the vigil. I had to talk to daughter. I said, look, this is what it's for. She said,
right.
Oh my God. I said, yeah, your base is fully mobilized. So this is another time to raise your voice around the bill, and you have these folks behind you. Right, you need to recognize this moment, because we didn't have a Jersey City case when we had George Floyd, but we didn't have a Jersey City case, right? And as a young woman, and as a young legislator, I don't think she really understood what she was stepping into. I think her intentions were there, but coming up against the police union is some tough stuff, and it goes against what they call political wisdom, right? Damn political wisdom when you fight for justice, right? Political wisdom goes out the window, right? You got to stand up and fight on principle, right? So we're hoping that daughter, recognizes that. And it means that folks from her base, from her community, are going to have to meet with her and the other representatives that are in the legislature, in your base. They need to hear from y'all, right?
Right.
One of the ways that we think we can help you in creating those kind of meetings and creating those conversations, and because if we, get this bill, and then there's another bill that we have also around implementing community-led emergency response teams for these kind of crises, right? Salvation for Social Justice, a good organization that's based in Trenton, is pushing that bill, right? So, this is a time when we need to, have that vision from the community side, from the people side, fight for those things that need to be put in place to be the difference that we need to see. It's hard. These politicians do not have the kind of courage that they should. They're always looking for a way to negotiate out of the hard conversation, right? There are times when we cannot allow that. And Gilmore, I'm glad you lifted that young man up, right? We used to call him Educational Gilmore.
Yes.
He was one of the young brothers in the community that was turning it up in George Floyd's summer, and has got a background as a community organizer.
Yes.
Turned around and recognized that it was not just enough to mobilize in that summer, but to organize and to push for power where you can do that. Young brother ran for city council, and I don't think anybody expected that, but he ran and won.
Yes.
Yeah, it was important to appreciate to all my young heads looking at this, right? You can be the answer to the question, right? And as much as that arena will allow you to do that when you're going in there for the people for real, right? And when we talk about, having folks in a meeting with the assembly person this or the state senator that. We need to have people like Councilman Gilmore in those conversations to help lead them. So I'm glad that young man is there, right? And I'm looking forward to re-engaging with him in helping us force these conversations in these legislative spaces that we need to go moving forward.
Yes.
All right. So I wanted to leave. I didn't want this to end with a somber note. The mobilization that we've gotten from the community has been good. And it's
Yeah,
been good.
I'm sorry, I didn't mention Billmore Unity and
Nevin
Johnson.
came out of the same summer.
Yeah. Yeah, they were all out there with us, and a lot of them we knew prior to even this situation. Within our families, like we did know some of these people, but yes, they have been, and even the community of Jersey City, and that, like when you said for on October 22nd, at one point we were thinking of teaming up with Pop, but then I was like, no, I think Jersey City needs its own. Jersey City needs to mobilize themselves.
You have the support for it.
To do it here.
We have the support.
We have to do it here in Jersey City.
Good for you.
Has their base, and they've been doing it for a while. So
right.
Some changes here in Jersey City, and we definitely need them.
Right, and there's some other stories that I can tell you about some other cities and some other cases like this that'll break your heart. But I don't want to do that to you now. I want to keep this on an up note as we wind up. Ed, you want to look? Oh man, listen, Principal Kafele, right? I don't know if you know the great Baruti Kafele. Toni, but he's a nationally renowned, one of our baddest black educators in the country, straight out of Jersey City. Get out of Jersey City, right? Who's not treated properly in our area in Essex County by virtue of what he was trying to bring into the classroom, into the schools that he ran, but by virtue of him standing on his excellence, his standards, his principle. He's become a world-class trainer of teachers, right? Educators and particularly teachers needing to know how to teach black children, right? He just gave Gilmore a shout out. I don't know if you saw that.
I saw that. Yes.
Yeah. So that's another native son that's hearing us and hearing us clearly. So you got love in the community, and we need to build on that love, right? And now we're going to try and take this show out in a way that may put some smile on your face, because we have a ritual question that we ask our guests whenever they come amongst us, particularly for the first time. Did you want to ask Toni that question?
So, Toni, we are actually a hip hop political radio talk show. We broadcast normally out of Rutgers University in our studio, and so we're like 15 years old. But normally, what we do is whenever we get new folks on, we like to ask them from a hip hop perspective. As you know, hip hop is 50 years old now, getting closer to that point where they're going to qualify real soon for
hip hop done got grown.
Yeah. So, but we like to ask folks, what are they listening to? Are you listening to anything in particular from the hip hop genre that sort of keeps you motivated, keeps you moving, keeps you fighting at this particular point for Drew?
I like the old, the 90s hip hop. Those are the ones that I still enjoy. But it's good you mentioned this, because what I want to do for October 22nd is have a few artists that are socially conscious, that are rappers. Okay. I was looking at EPMD, like that kind of music, because that was what I grew up on. And that's where my mind is.
What you mean you grew up on? You like a young one? What you talking about? What you talking
about? That's why I didn't want to answer, because I didn't want to start dating myself. But yeah, but yeah, I look at that and that's kind of the music that I like, but that's something maybe you can help me with, because we were I was looking for finding a few artists that would be that would come out, that would at the rally when we're in Lincoln Park. working on the permits and everything now, but having some socially conscious music or rap or spoken word to be there to end our rally with.
Well, I mean, of course, Zaid, if Zaid haven't told you, on next Saturday, October the 7th, we're celebrating Amiri's birthday, and we're doing something called On the Road to the Convention. And we have 3 different panels that are going to be going on. Particularly, I think the one you all should come in and participate and be part of should definitely be the panel that Zaid is hosting, the police panel, and stop the violence in our community. But more importantly, there is also going to be a panel on the 50th 50 years of hip hop and artists. So you'll be able to meet some different artists and perhaps invite some of them to come to Jersey City. So that's going to be next Saturday on the 7th. If you haven't gotten the flyer, Zaid, we can make sure she get that so she knows exactly where that's going to go on at.
Absolutely.
Okay.
And so it's not just going to be you. There's going to be a whole host of other families. We're going to make sure we invite all of the folks who've been affected by police violence, so that you all could be in the panel, be in that auditorium, and we can put some light on that in terms of what's happened to you all, and as you all continue to move forward to fight for justice.
That's right.
Thank you.
Right. You'll get that from me in a Mississippi Minute. We had some last things that we had to deal with in terms of our own protocol before we could release it, but now we can put it out.
Right. Yeah.
One last thing, as you go out, I noticed something on your right shoulder. Tell everybody what's on your right shoulder.
Oh, this is the ribbon. The green ribbon represent mental health awareness. So when you wear this green ribbon, it'll help us make sure you're mindful to stop the stigma that we have against mental health, people suffering from mental health.
One of the things that we'll wind here. One of the things that we've been really trying to break serious ground with in Newark. Newark has built up, and Mayor deserves a lot of credit for this, right? We took on the question of violence as a public health emergency, right? And when we ran him, got him in the city hall, a new slate of folks in the city hall, we built up a community-based violence intervention ecosystem, is the language that they use, of folks who were trained in how to negotiate peace in the face of violence, how to respond to the violence when it happens, right? And how to get people help when they need it, right? Mm-hmm. That reflects the kind of trauma that they have been carrying from being victimized from violence, and how that can impair and challenge our mental health. So there is a network of services that have been developed in Newark, and has helped bring our violence numbers down without the police.
Wow.
Right. So there's I want us to, look at us and each other as not just what we got to do because this is wrong, but what we can do because it's right. Right. So stay tuned. There's a lot of love coming your way. Right. It's a pleasure to finally get you on. Love to your family. Right. We'll be around on the 12th and the 14th, and I'm really looking forward to what you're going to develop on the 22nd. And I will send you in a little while what we have for the 7th. Right. So you have that right away. Okay.
Yes. Thank you so much.
You're welcome. Good to have you. Good to have you. Talk to you soon.
All right.
I saw your other guests back there, John, Zaid, but they have not, popped on as of yet. So I hope he didn't think that because we were running over that we were not going to bring him in. So
was that Bill Fletcher?
I'm not sure. I didn't see the name, but it was someone that was back there. Maybe you might want to see if you can reach out to who.
I didn't. Now Jonathan brought Bill on. Right. So I hope I don't have Bill's contact information. Now I was also trying to get Pamela and Nevin on to come on with Toni, Pamela Johnson from the Hudson County Anti-Violence Coalition Movement, and Nevin Perkins, the little brother that she referred to with Bill More Unity. Right. Nevin has been on before. Nevin was on with Chris before.
Okay.
Pamela's on a long time ago. Pamela has been on before a long time ago, but not in connection with this particular incident. So, I just hope it wasn't Bill, because I don't have a way to get to Bill.
Right.
Bring him back. And he needs to organize. Has been out here a long time, longer than me, for sure. I met Bill many years ago, and I hope he does come on.
Is Bill part of Larry's organization?
No.
Oh,
Bill's based in D.C. for years. I don't know if he's still down there. But back in the days when we really started turning the volume up around apartheid in South Africa, right? Bill, and then when things really started happening in D.C. with people like Randall Robinson and whatnot, Bill was right in that mix, right? It was Trans Africa and whatnot. He was right in that mix, and Bill brought the black labor movement's history and energy of protest into that, wave of the anti-apartheid movement. That's how I met him some time ago, and he's been a long-standing, carrier of labor solidarity. Now, the great Jonathan Austin has just popped in. He's gonna tell us what's up with his guest.
Hey, how you doing? Bill Fletcher is getting ready to pop on just for 15 minutes.
Good. I'm glad
but he is a great person, great intellect that is very familiar with labor movements and the intellectual, like what the history of labor movements, especially Black people in labor, right? So we're looking forward to definitely having him on to enlighten us about what's going on. There are more worker actions going on right now than in years, right? And people are talking about the way in which these labor movements are happening. Like Bill Fletcher is a noted author, activist, and scholar, has been involved in the labor movement for decades, and it's an honor to have him on. We talked to him on the show last year, and it's because I'm a little bit of a geek and I'm a debate coach. And as a debate coach, I love talking to intellectuals about stuff we debate about. We are debating a lot about worker rights movements, Black people in those movements. What does it mean for Black people in the labor movement now? What does it look like now? What's going on now? Help us understand.
That's what you guys are talking about?
Huh?
Well, I mean, yes, we always have some level of
engagement Jonathan.
We always have some level of engagement on capitalism, labor, that history of Black people in labor. So I mean, so like, as I said, as someone who's a debate coach, I always enjoy when we have Bill Fletcher on and talking to him. It's an honor to have like such an intellectual on our program to talk about stuff that we don't talk about enough within our community, and that is Black people within the labor movement, and what is some of that history, and what's going on right now. Like right now, and welcome, Bill. There's so many different labor actions going on. We have the auto workers that are going on. We have the writer strike. We've got issues that deal with AI. We have, and it seems like every week there is a new labor action that is that serious labor action that is going on in the United States. So, Bill Fletcher, welcome to All Politics Are Local. And what is currently going on in terms of labor that we need to know about now, with the strikes we're hearing about, with the different demands for things that labor is making? What should we know about the labor movement right now, with the actions that are going on, with the different strikes that are going on? What does that look like, especially when we take into account the large measure of wealth inequality that exists in the United States, the large number, like the way in which we just accept that there's almost unlimited compensation at the top of a lot of these corporations, and what happens? We've had labor actions on this show in the last year that dealt with Rutgers University. We've had labor actions that dealt with nurses who were heroes during COVID, but right now they want to mess with their benefits, make nurses like not even have benefits and taking them away when they're on strike. So what should we know? What's going on? What is the environment? Is there really an upsurge in labor movements? And does that mean that something has changed?
Yeah, no, there's no question but that there's an upsurge. And but it's not something that suddenly happened. So first of all, public opinion polls have indicated an increasing interest and support for unions over the years. And at this point, it's quite high. I think it's around 70%. The second thing is that I date what we're going through right now back to about 2011, when we started to have the massive demonstrations in Madison, Wisconsin. We had Occupy, and there was this churning that's been going on. What we're looking at right now is a direct result of the fact that the standard of living for the average worker has been stagnant or declining since the 1970s. And that, as you said, there's been this massive polarization of wealth. And people, frankly, are pissed off. And so what we see in the United Auto Workers strikes right now is they're demanding, after years of making concessions to management, where management would say, no, we need more concessions in order to be profitable. And the workers look and they see that the companies are profitable and that the CEOs are making zillions of dollars. And they're saying, what about us? What about us? And that's why they're striking. And they're right. They're striking because the wealth in this country is so polarized. And it was the increasing polarization because of Trump's antics in 2017 with that so-called tax reform that gave all of this wealth to people who already have wealth, and workers are upset. So whether they're in Amazon, Starbucks, whether it's the UPS workers, whether it's teachers, people are rising up and saying enough is enough.
So you're saying that right now what's going on is that it is dealing with the same 1% lines that were, like during Occupy Wall Street, they were talking about the 1%, right? We heard that language that was used even in like the 2012 presidential campaign when they were just using that terminology of the 1%. Are you saying that that has just never went away? I was reading where popular mainstream commentators are like, Occupy Wall Street failed, right? Like these movements have failed. Progressive movements have failed. What you're saying is kind of the opposite. They've literally spread.
Right. No, that's right. And you see, it's the wealth polarization has gotten worse. And these idiots in Congress and the Republican Party right now that are trying to block stuff and are bringing the government to a halt, they want to make it worse. I mean, there's a question to the Republican Party. Why do they like poverty? Why do they like poverty? Why do they like jamming workers? Why do they like making the conditions for workers worse? I mean, that's the question that we should be asking.
And can you just elaborate? What do you mean by jamming workers? What do you mean by like why do you mean by the Republican Party wants to jam workers, not like workers? What are they specifically doing that is anti-work, anti-union? And I'm saying this just for our audience.
No, that's great. So I want to go back to the 2017 Trump tax reform. So what did he do? He basically redirected more wealth, to the upper echelon, the upper 10% of the population, people that don't need it. He made it more difficult for middle and lower income people. There were all kinds of things like, being able to make contributions to tax deductible organizations. And that became more difficult. Well, who does that? Regular people. Working people that want to contribute to a community organization or to the Red Cross or the United Nations or whatever. And all of that was made
public radio. We can talk about stuff for real.
That's right. Exactly. To public radio. And they made it more difficult while they made it easier for the wealthy to become wealthier. There was a clip where Trump went into some bar after the tax cut was passed and was saying to all these rich white guys, hey, you all should be happy because I made you all richer, something to that effect. I mean, he was at least being very honest. That's what I mean by jamming regular people. And the problem is that what Trump has successfully done, and these other Republicans, is that they have so confused white people, white working people, into believing that their incomes are stagnating because of us, as opposed to that rich people have their hands in our pockets and are grabbing our money. That's what's going on. Now, what these unions are doing are basically saying, no, enough is enough. We're going to redistribute some of this wealth. And the president of the UAW has been very clear about that. And I'm actually quite proud of him. And he's been saying, including to Trump, get the heck out of here. You know, you rich billionaire, what have you done for working people? Nothing other than confuse people as to who the enemy is. And so we've had this declining living standard. And it's not just Republicans, by the way. You've had Democrats like Clinton.
Yeah, I was going to come to that. Go ahead.
Right? You have Democrats like Clinton that encouraged economic policies that furthered the polarization of wealth. They just did it in a softer way. And, you know, and in his case was able to play the saxophone.
Well, what were some of those things that Democrats did? We know that Republicans love tax cuts. They love to union bust. I was watching the Republican debates, and Chris Christie again is talking about how teachers unions destroy education, where all those states that are bad with education are right to work states. The states that are best on education are union states, right? Like you look at New Jersey, you look at New York, you look at Massachusetts. They are the most unionized states. They have the best education systems. You look at the worst education systems like Arkansas, Mississippi, the people who, like the lowest rated education systems in the country are right to work states where the unions don't have any say.
Absolutely. But you do have some Democrats that have consumed the Kool-Aid on economics, and they believed that the best way to improve the economy was to encourage rich people. Now, one of the things that's interesting about this moment was seeing Joe Biden on a picket line. This is the first time. You know, I mean, I remember when I first got into the union movement, one of the stories I was told was about a statement made by Franklin Roosevelt in the 1930s, where he said if he ever went to work in a factory, the first thing he would do would join a union. Well, that was great. Well, now we actually have a president who has spoken out in favor of the demands of the workers and then showed up at a picket line. That's pretty historic. We've got to build on that, and we've got to keep pushing. We've got to keep pushing and making sure we don't go backwards. And that's what's critical at this moment. So we're at a really dicey moment in time. So right now we have the right-wing Republicans that are jamming government, that are bringing everything to a halt. What are they trying to do? What they want to do is eliminate social programs. That is what their objective is. They want to eliminate all of these programs, for example, that have been targeted around the environment and the environmental catastrophe we're going through, but programs that were particularly targeted at communities of color that have suffered the worst as a result of environmental degradation. These right-wing Republicans want to get rid of that. They want to make it more difficult for the average working person, because their whole theory is one of this whole pull yourself up by the bootstraps, except if you have a great inheritance and you don't have to worry about those bootstraps. And that's the situation we're in. That's why workers are looking around and saying, well, it's time. It's time to organize unions and it's time to strike. But the other thing we've got to keep in mind is that in this country, because the laws are so bad in terms of protecting workers, it is often cost effective for employers to fire workers who want to unionize, right? Workers that want to exercise their right to unionize can be easily fired, kept off the job for years, and the penalties to employers are minimal. So part of what we have to do is we have to change that. We have to make sure that when employers penalize workers for exercising their rights, they get slapped down really bad, really quickly.
It's interesting. Like I said, I'm a debate coach, and we're doing some research. And one of my students today brought to me something I actually hadn't heard of, Project 2025. First, I thought it was a conspiracy theory, right? Like, as in a goal of a series. Heritage Foundation is putting together projects or leading a
Right.
series of conservatives to put together what their ideal would be if a Trump-like conservative was elected. And it's wild,
Yeah.
as in like what they're talking about is completely transforming government in a way
Mm-hmm.
that takes away the ability to regulate private industry.
Right.
Like it seems like from what I'm looking at, that they're fighting on different levels to roll back the ability to do EPA regulations, the ability to look at issues of race in schools, right? Like all that, like, so there's the economic stuff, and then there's the racial identity based, let make poor white people feel good stuff that is being combined. And it's one of those things that is like, I feel like I'm living in the
Twilight Zone.
1880s or in the
The
1880s, where it's like the rollback is happening clear, right? And
That's
it
right.
may take 50 years to, and a movement of historic dimensions to push
again.
back against it, right?
That's
Um,
exactly right.
Mm-hmm.
That's what's happening. It's called in the 1870s, 80s, it was called the redemption movement. The redeemers, the people that were trying to destroy and succeeded in destroying Reconstruction. We're seeing new redeemers, these right wingers. And what you described, that Project 2025, is not simply proposal. They are out there recruiting about 1,000 people so far, so that if Trump or DeSantis or one of these other individuals gets elected, that the day that they're inaugurated, these people will come into town and swarm in like a horde of locusts. And their objective is exactly what you said, to redo government. And so, yes, that's what we're up against. That's what we have to fight. That's why the election in 2024 is so important, because these forces want to take us back to roughly 1898. They really, what we're witnessing is a revolt. They want to overturn the 20th century. And the question, my attitude is, shame on us if we let these clowns get away with it.
but it seems like that it's not even about just getting away with it. It's about knowing about it, right? Like there are conservative movements that are bubbling up that are just mainstream conservative movements that combined like ultra racist white supremacy plus the economic conservatives. So it seems like the economic conservatives and the white supremacists have united, and they're getting extra help from, you know, it seems like there's like this multicultural anti-blackness there too, where you have like larger groups of people who are representing, like, or say or claim to be representing certain segments of Latinos or certain segments of Black people who are also, you know, joining that thing, right?
Right.
Um, that I that rollback, like, and it's one of those things that it's an it's at the same time an anti-intellectual movement, but a very conniving one and a very deliberate one on economics. It's very sloppy when it comes to identity politics, such as like banning quote critical race theory and the teaching of Black history, uh, and very methodical when it comes to rollbacks on taxes, cutting the ability to regulate people who are poisoning everybody, right? Like, I just, what do you think about the level in which I went to visit West Virginia? My uncle lives there, birthday party going down to West Virginia, and nobody kills poor white people like rich white people. And
Mhm.
we look at the ways in which the labor movement, like they just straight murdered white people for wanting to stand up for their rights to vote in West
Right.
Virginia. The coal mining, like they poisoned them, underpaid them, killed them when they wanted benefits. Like I'm like, nobody kills poor white people like rich white people.
Right.
Yet they are so strident in defending and joining with the people who maul them and the policies that maul them. Like people in coal mine, like we want clean coal, and they're dying, right? Like of black lung disease. Like they don't, and they don't want to give them benefits. What what is the breakthrough of that? Like it seems like if poor white people ever understood who was actually murdering them, robbing them of opportunity, mauling them, they might go 1-6 on them. Like what is the what's going on with that? Like and what does it look like it could be any different now?
Well,
I
what
think
you're talking
I think he's trying to ask you in a polite way if white folks can get out of the way of their own whiteness, will they
Right.
ever wake the hell up?
That's the question. And whiteness exists in order to guarantee that the people that are in power stay in power, so that they aim to convince the poorest white people that they have more in common with the richest white people than they do with other poor people. That's, I mean, ever since the 1600s, that's the objective. And so, what we have to do, and this is one of the tasks of the unions, is to actually break this down. And it is really hard because whiteness becomes the only thing that Euro Americans can hold on to give themselves an identity as their world is collapsing. And when they are ready to, when they release that and understand what's going on, then we're talking about the possibility of transforming this country. That's what we're looking at. And that's, it's this is what was going on in Reconstruction. It was one of the reasons that it was really important for the groups like the KKK to go after white people who sided with blacks in Reconstruction. It was the way that voter disenfranchisement operated, not just to disenfranchise black folks, but to disenfranchise poor whites that got out of hand. I mean, we see this happen again and again. And so it's really important that we are working with and aiming to win these whites over, because otherwise they become a force for fascism, to be honest.
Yeah, and
And,
that's what's happening. Go ahead, Jonathan. I know you want to jump in on that. Go ahead.
and I was gonna ask, right? Like, okay, so again, I'm a high school debate coach. We have fun with ideas and trying
A
to figure out
legendary
stuff.
high school debate because he's being modest.
But
Go ahead.
thank you, man. But one of the things that idea we're playing with is that the only way to save the planet is to defeat white supremacy, right? Because whether it's the environment, whether it's the way capitalism runs, whether it's like the only way to get through and deal with like this planet is because it's one of those things that runs through everything, right? Like if you want to deal with the ways in which capitalism is destroying the planet, right? Like whether it from just the way in which you are taking away resources from the public domain and just giving them to private individuals, to what you're doing with them in terms of leading to climate change and not caring because it's profit over people. And all of this is fueled by just this insatiable white supremacist need to dominate that comes up, right? That's there. That undergirds a lot of capitalist thought, the negative parts of capitalism, the negative parts of violence, the negative parts of militarism, where we're selling like, and labor comes a lot into this, right? Because it seems like if there was a robust labor movement, it would serve as a major force to check a lot of those excesses.
That's right.
Do you think that that is something that is like? What do you think about that? I'm just throwing it out there. I just realized I want to hear you talk, man.
Let me add to the question because I'm glad you're going there, Jonathan. But I want to add to the question in this way: for all of the modern industrialized democracies in the Western world, right? The United States has the smallest organized labor force.
That's right.
How, and to add to Jonathan's question, How do we break that limited paradigm? And is this a moment that we can seize, where we can actually create the expansion of a labor movement, right? To get this working class and all of its limitations with its consciousness out of this backwards position.
So I'd say two things. One is that we're confronting both white supremacy and male supremacy, which are undermining the ability to defeat capitalism. And the second thing is, Zaid, to your point, yes, we can do this. This is a time for experimentation. This is a time for possibilities, but we need a broad movement. Some of us call it a movement for a third reconstruction. And it basically needs to be very broad. So this cannot be Black folks only. Bottom line, most Black folks can count. We look around, we know we are not the majority. Therefore, actual liberation is going to necessitate a broader alignment. And part of what you were raising, Jonathan, is that there are forces arrayed that wish to create a new apartheid situation. And what they're thinking about, and this is one of the ways we got to think about some of these so-called Latino and Latina individuals and so-called African American individuals who end up saying all kinds of right-wing nonsense, is that it's not simply that they're stupid, because some of them are and some of them aren't. It's that they are prepared to accept white supremacy, the idea of the white republic, as long as they get a piece of the action. And all we have to do is look at what happened in apartheid South Africa. Apartheid South Africa was not simply about a small number of white people dominating Black folks. There were Black folks that sided with the apartheid white because they got a piece of the action, right? So
I don't remember that's where we met. We met when we were both much younger, and you were bringing those labor forces into the anti-apartheid movement many years ago. I just wanted to.
There you go.
I knew that. Right on. Roland.
Thank you. And that's what we have to. So it's like, because I have the same feeling. It's like I'm seeing some of these right wingers, and they have like a Latin name. I said, what the heck? Or you see someone who's Black, who's clearly Black, saying all kinds of nonsense. They have decided, they have come to accept the idea that the U.S. is a white republic, and that as long as they pay homage to that and don't raise too much hell, they'll have a piece of the action. But let me give you, because we're running out of time, and I have a wife who's going to be beating me over the head if I don't get to do that.
And you've been very generous with your time, and I absolutely appreciate it.
Accountability matters.
Let me just raise something that I've been raising around the country. So we got these laws that got passed, like in Florida, that said you can't teach things about race that make white people or anyone feel guilty, right? You know what I'm talking about, right? And make them feel ashamed. So I'm making the argument that African Americans, Native Americans, Chicanos, Puerto Ricans, and Asians need to file class action lawsuits in each of these states. Challenging, the way that history is taught. Because the way that history is taught makes us feel bad. Makes us feel guilty, right? Because if you can't talk about race, how can you talk about us? You can't talk about us. That means we're invisible. That makes me feel really bad. So let's use DeSantis's own laws and kick them in the rear. Let's go around the country. You don't want to talk about race? Okay, fine. You feel bad when we talk about it. Well, how the hell do you think I feel? How the hell do you think an Apache or a Comanche feels? Right? When their history is completely obliterated, they feel pretty bad.
Right.
So maybe that means we can't teach U.S. history. That's one possibility. Maybe U.S. history has to vaporize from the school system. Or, in the alternative, maybe it has to be reconstructed. So I'm going to leave that with you guys to think about.
Mm-hmm.
Well,
Right on.
thank you. We
Right on.
appreciate you being here. We're
Okay.
gonna have to get you back on more often
All
because I
right.
remember you
Thank you.
were on before talking about the labor movement. It is more and more, I believe that we need to we have a real good understanding of what went before, and we got to get you back to talk about some of your mystery novels. So we got to
All
do
right.
that too.
That sounds like a
All right.
plan.
I didn't know about
All right.
that. We were getting ready.
Everyone take care.
Right
All
on.
right. Take
Okay.
care.
Okay. Bye. Bye.
Bye bye.
Oh, you
Hey.
asked a question.
Oh, we did not. We did not. We did not. We did not. We have to get him back on to ask the question as well. I know I'm going to be jumping off in a second as well. I'm actually doing double duty and coaching at we have kids here at Science this evening debating, and they're going to be here this weekend debating
Yeah.
as well. Now I know that there's another guest that's coming on or should have come on that talks
Yeah, I
that's
don't know
going to be
what happened.
talking.
I hope we didn't lose Kamau because originally we told him 7. I hope he didn't have a schedule conflict. I haven't heard back from him because Kamau has really been doing some good work. And I was hoping
Okay.
he would have came on while Bill was still on so we could merge that conversation because Kamau's done some good stuff on.
Oh, that would have been perfect.
Yeah,
That would have been perfect because
it'd have been a good lift. It would have been
you're talking about Cop City, and I know that we had right, and I know that we had the young brother from Seton Hall on a while ago, right? And he's often co-host our show, and he was been talking about Cop City too. What is Cop City? What's been going on? And Zaid, I know that you've been into it. Can you talk to us about what is at like what's going on and what's at stake, and what can we see coming to a place near us?
just as we talk about, you hear me talk about fascism a lot. You hear Demo talk about fascism a lot, right? Bill,
Right.
we didn't get a chance to really expand on that with Bill, but Bill mentioned the whole question of fascism, right? Fascism is the eradication of dissent in its simplest language, right? And the enforcers of the eradication of the dissent is the state. And the state ultimately, in the most practical and the most immediate sense, is the police. So what is Cop City, right? Atlanta, Georgia. This is huge. I forget how many acres it is, but it's dozens. It's a very large, beautiful, lush, green area, right? I can't. I'll mispronounce the indigenous name for it. It begins with a W, right? We look at. I know I'm going to mispronounce it. Wolanki. It's a beautiful forest area that needs to be cultivated to help the area, the surrounding communities, have some greenery to build and to live around, right? Right. This is supposed to be wiped out and leveled to create a huge police military training apparatus, right? With the express purpose of training police to put down the kind of protests that we saw in the summer of 2020.
Now, is
We're
that
not going to
explicit?
train police
Now
into
here's a
really
question.
policing. Yeah.
Is that something that's explicit?
Yes. Yes. And you heard Bill talk about the buy-in of Black folks into this, right? There's public money and there's private money going into this major project, right? And it looks like some of that private money has touched some of the soft behinds of Black elected officials that make up the city council of Atlanta, right? So in spite of this mass protest, and this is before Tortuguia gets killed and before 61 activists get indicted with RICO charges. RICO charges. Stuff that you want to put away the worst gangsters away with. RICO charges for nonviolent civil disobedient protests over the environment and police and justice, right? 61 people are faced. So those RICO charges, this, petition signed to the thousands right? If democracy was working locally in Atlanta, this would become a referendum question that would go right to the people. Do you want Cobb City or do you not want Cobb City? And the overwhelming documentation of that dissent is no. But
Now, let me ask you again, right? I asked you this question before, just now. You answered it. But just for clarification, is Cop City specifically built to train paramilitary forces to put down protests? And
yes,
how do we know that's what it's used for? It's not
I mean this
just to
is
train.
it's a part of it's that's the driving force of their rollout, right? Instead of being
But are they saying this publicly, or do we just think this public?
no, I mean
Like is it explicit?
that's what's generated the opposition. You know, if we didn't know this, we wouldn't have the grounds for this kind of protest. But that's what's driving the mass opposition. Folks see that coming, right? And it's like I said, it's not a secret. It's what they want to do, right? And the tragic thing is that God, you know, this is a $90 million project. You know what you could do with
Wait,
90?
90 million? Wait, 90
Yeah,
million?
yes.
$90 million project in Georgia. Now, is this supported by the people? I heard this was supported by black politicians in Atlanta. Is that true? It's not
In
something that
spite
it's not something
of
the
the
governor and the
larger
state is doing.
popular will of the larger Atlanta community in opposition to that. There's been a
So
major
can you
petition
repeat
drive
that?
for
Because I can
hmm?
repeat that.
Yeah,
Like, talk to me. Like,
yeah.
is this
There's
supported by the political infrastructure of Atlanta?
mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
So
There's
the
been a
mayor of Atlanta supports it. The
yeah,
mayor of the county, the major count, the major Democratic black run county, right, in Georgia, that they
it's
support
dis-
this.
it's disgusting. It's
So
disgusting.
so so you're talking about black people and black politicians who are working with white politicians in Georgia, and together they
Working
support
with the police.
training paramilitary forces. Because it's because to say police, I think maybe we're because it's not like beat cop on the corner. You're talking about people trained to put down protests that'll have like equipment to do that.
Mhm.
Is that what we're talking about?
Equipment and their notion of specialized training.
But
This
John,
is this is for the police to put down protests.
but also when you talk about politicians, John, they have some noted politicians like Julian Bond's son is one of the major supporters for Cop City, right?
Wow.
Who is also an elected official, right? And he defends that to no end. In terms of the amount of he helps with the amount of money that's been raised. He goes into the black community and talks about the good it's going to do. And as you know, they've had so many people that have come to speak before the city council. It went over for days just in terms of the number of people who are against this, right? And then, as you know what they're talking about is that if they're successful at getting this built in Atlanta, they're talking about duplicating this type of paramilitary training facility for police all over the country.
But
Particularly,
what's the incentive for black politicians? Like, are we getting a lot of money? Is it bringing money to the community? Like, what is that? Like, I mean, these are. It seems like it's explicit training ground to attack people in our community who are organizing, like
exactly.
against police brutality, or
Right.
like
Right.
and really
That's what
like
the George Floyd
the
summer
biggest
was.
protests have been against police brutality, right?
Right.
Like, so it seems like, well, unless you count 1/6, I mean, that was pretty big. But it doesn't seem like Cop City is for like the white nationalist on 1/6. I mean, is that the side game? It's like, oh, look at all these white nationalists. They're going to be out. We need to get them in check. So Cop City. Like, why does it seem like it's targeting us? Like, is it
Yes, it
targeting?
is. It's
So why do?
it's
So
targeting
help me make sense. Are any black politicians speaking out against it?
around most of outside of the area are
But
right.
inside the area, like
It's that
the
that
mayor of
local
Atlanta.
that local cabal is in cahoots with it, and it's
So the
ugly.
mayor of Atlanta, city council people, like
Yeah,
I mean,
it's
that
ugly.
they just elected officials just all in. Now is like, are they just getting paid? What's the angle? Like it doesn't seem like the policy. The policy seems pretty. It is like, look, we're about to do some real fascism. We need some people to train with that, right? We're gonna specifically be trained to target protesters.
But
Seems
isn't it what Bill just said? When he was talking about how you got some black folks, who are, looking black, but of course they say some of the crazy stuff that Republicans are saying, right? So that is really the same thing. I mean, you got black folk who are speaking against their own genocide, right? And you
For them.
know,
Yeah.
huh? And remember, police brutality hasn't ended. I mean, it may not be getting as much publicity as it once got because Republicans are making sure that it stays out of the news. But let's be honest. I mean, they still beating the hell out of black people, still killing black people, still violating black folks. But it doesn't help them raise money. So, and them building Cop City quietly is to try and tamp that down. I mean, just Jonathan, if you take a look at the Supreme Court, you take a look at everything being rolled back, and what you just said is how many years is it going to take for us to recover? And that was one of the questions or that was part of the conversation Zaid was having today with Mama Baraka, right? Do we really know what time it is? Are we really aware of what the hell is happening in this country, right? And again, Jonathan, that is, and Zaid, that is part of being able to teach proper education, right? Being able to teach proper history, right? That's part of it. And when Bill speaks to that, when he says that, because if y'all remember, Condoleezza Rice said the reason she supported what was happening down in Florida and not teaching white children Black history was because it made them feel bad. Well, you heard what Bill just said. Well, shit, y'all teaching us white history and teaching us the wrong way, and especially the way they taught the congressman Uncle Bill. Remember that book he showed us?
Yeah.
Where he
Yeah.
showed us
Yeah.
the
10 little
kids?
niggas. 10 little
Yeah.
niggas.
Yeah.
Oh yeah. And that's in our lifetime.
right. Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. That's in our lifetime and there. I'm gonna have to step off and get back to work and see how these kids are doing. But yeah, man, like I like talking to Bill Fletcher tonight, right? In terms of labor movement, stuff's going on there. And I really wish the guest for Cop City had come on because I really wanted to know more about that.
Yeah, I've
Like
been trying
the
to
thing that
it was a
astounds
good
me about that is like that local politician. I think the thing that trips me out about it more than anything else is this isn't the state of Georgia versus the city of Atlanta, right? Like I thought this would be the state of Georgia versus city of Atlanta. You got a white dominated state, you got a very black city. They're trying to do these
That's how
things
it
so that
should
when
be.
people are protesting, and I thought there was going to be a black city pushing back against some like serious white supremacy, especially if their whole point of Cop City is to create new techniques to crack down on protesters. Like that just seems like, yo, like are you really seriously trying to like, especially because given the income inequality that Bill was talking about, given the police brutality, given the ways in which society is rolling back on previous civil rights, um, it seems like this would be a time for unrest. So it seems like they're preparing for the unrest that they know is coming. And it
And
seems like, you know,
Mhm.
it's targeting us in the process.
Mhm.
So
And like going back to our plantation or struggles, right? Master had an overseer class that was white and black.
right, and you know
Right?
what astounds me
The
also
police
is that
infrastructure, as we now know it, has got a lot of black folks willing to go along with this stuff.
right, you got blacks, you got Latinos, you got white people, and some of the blacks and some of the Latinos there are
Because they're going to be
more
all
striped.
right.
Right,
This
they're
order
more
that
striped.
they're trying to create is going to take care of them because
Right.
they're going to be the agents enforcing that order.
Right, right. And it seems like they know it, right? Like they know that that is their position, role, place within it. I was watching the Republican debates on Wednesday, and I just saw I'm sorry, Tim Scott. I didn't even mean that. I didn't mean to call him Tim Cotton. That
Yes,
was an
you did.
accident. I'm not
Yes,
no
you
means
did.
for disrespect. I did not. I did not. That slipped. That was a slip. I was like Tim's Cotton. Slop. Tim Scott. I saw Tim Scott, and again, no disrespect to Tim Scott. Probably a very nice man. Understand it. Did not mean that. But he was like doing a little dance, to make white people feel real good, right? America is not a racist country. It's just done some racist things. Like, come on, man, really? After it was over, some people were like, "Look, I'm not voting for Tim Scott, but gosh darn it, did he give a good speech?" Like, damn. I don't know how he'll do in this
Baby.
here election going up. I ain't voting for him, but gosh darn it, you know, that Tim Scott made me feel good about America, right? It was like wild, right? Um, so it just seems like the anti-blackness is coming out in force. And on top of that, Tim Scott was trying to be real black because Tim Scott was like, you can't say that black people learned from slavery or slavery was what was that? We got skills from
Had benefit.
slavery, right? We were
Had
benefited
benefit.
from it in some way. Tim Scott was mad. He was feeling some kind of way. And he was like, that's wrong for you to say, Dos Santos. That sentence should have been taken out. That sentence. That sentence. But even Tim Scott is about like history not being taught. He's not jumping in that fight, right? Like he's still on this like pretend critical race theory. I'm always telling people, look, man, critical race theory isn't taught in most high school places. It's just not.
That's
They
not
teach
what.
Black
That's not what it
history,
is.
but right,
Yeah,
but I
that's
mean
not all
there's
what it
usually
is.
college level course, college level material, and usually what you're teaching isn't like like that deep in terms of theory. Unless of course you're a debate coach. If you're a debate coach, you actually do teach critical race theory, like I do, right? Like I teach all sorts of critical race theory. We got all day, every day, right? Critical race theory about capitalism, neocolonialism. We teach about settler colonialism, right? We teach about the ways in which genocide and murder and the ways in which those things have happened, right?
Mhm.
Because those are relevant to debates that you have. And so it's interesting that in certain states like Texas and Florida, you are literally just crippling your debate teams. Because no one else in the state is teaching the real stuff, right? Like, in terms of that theory that's usually taught at the college level, but they're trying to get it so that's not even taught in college, right? So they're literally trying to intellectually dumb down people, get them not to think, get them not to know what's going on, so that they can just push whatever they want to push. But I've got to head out. But yeah, like I'm really interested in knowing more about Cop City and what people are saying about it and what the nature of the protests are, and especially, and Zayed, you could talk about this, the ways they've already tried to decriminalize protest in the prosecutions. Like I know you're on top of that,
Criminalized
right?
protest. To criminalize protest.
Right,
Yes.
they are criminalizing protest and
Mhm.
protesters as we speak. It's not something that's being done in the future. People have been arrested
Right.
off of like
61
in
people.
Georgia in very, very like wow ways for protesting. Can you break down that? I'm heading out, but can you start breaking that down and why people need to know about that?
Yeah,
Why people
because
need to know about the
the
people who've
kind of
been arrested?
charges, yeah, the kind of charges, RICO charges, racketeering charge. Ed should break that down. Ed is the lawyer. He can break down what the hell RICO means. right? Better than I can. I'm just a street cat, right? But we're talking
Oh,
about the
street
kind.
cats know about Rico, man. You know what I'm
Yeah,
saying? Like
yeah, because they
street
use them
cats
to
do
lock
know
up
about
nasty
Rico.
stuff, right? But the
Right.
RICO charges were designed to go after your most dangerous, criminal organizations. That's what they were designed for, right? And here we're talking about, legitimate, nonviolent protests over the environment, and there's this backwards fascist paradigm of policing, right? We're not. It's not. It's sanity in the face of insanity, and it's disciplined, dignified protest with respect for law. Confronting an order that is really putting the limits on what the law means to people's right to free speech and to public assembly. We really are indeed at the crossroads again for how this country is going to go for the next several decades. And then folks really need to wake up. Now let me say this, and I didn't get a chance to say this to Toni because I wanted to keep things, more immediate for what she was facing with her family in terms of her loss of a nephew. But though we don't see as much energy in younger folks in our area here, it has been there. This is one of the things I was telling Mom about, my Baraka today we were talking, is that there is energy and has been energy in those very places where we need it, and that is particularly in the South, right? Folks have out-organized this effort to push this Cop City thing down our people's throat in Georgia, right? There were young folks who did mobilize and get the vote out, and we know some of them. Like little brother, my son, is supposed to be with us next week on the hip hop panel. He has worked in Georgia, in Alabama, doing get out the vote work that helped beat Trump's ass at the polls, right? So we can do this, right? But the question of awareness and critical mobilization at this particular moment is real serious. Folks, there's a real divide right now about why Cornel West is choosing to run now for president. Who is that going to help? Who's that going to hurt? Folks are divided about it, but the why of the divide is an important question. Is it who's it going to help? Is it going to help the right wingers, or is it going to help us beat the right wingers? It's a serious question that in a conversation that we need to have with somebody who is reputable, trustworthy, who we love. So I mean, so debate. It ain't just the kids that you're teaching that need to be debating. We need to have some live debates in a civil way, like your students do. Within our organizing circles and in our community circles, so we don't mess around and lose any more ground. Because if we lose any more ground, it's going to be a lot before we can recover. Oh yeah, I'm running my mouth, Jonathan. Long gone. And you're muted. You're still muted.
Yes, he had to get back to them kids, but
Yeah.
but I mean, you were making some good points. I mean, just in terms of all of it in and of itself, man. But I mean, let's be clear. The Republican Party have an entire agenda, man.
Mhm.
And so they have a vested interest, just like they did the first time around, in making sure Donald Trump got elected. Where they wanted to take over the Supreme Court. I mean, that's why they denied Barack Obama his pick,
That's
right?
right. That's
You
right.
know,
Barack had 2 terms, and he only had one an opportunity to get 1 pick in.
exactly. So,
And it totally flopped.
right. And strategically, the goal is to be able to dial back all of the achievements that were made in the civil rights movement, right? And they've
Not just that. And this is the point. This is real. I really wanted to go with Bill and ultimately with Kamau too. We're not just talking about the rollback of the civil rights movement or the overthrow of the second Reconstruction, but also, capitalism going buck wild, the complete notion of deregulation That's what drove the country into the epic depression of 1929. And people just like to forget that, right? Where there were no unions, right? And there were very little, right? And then, yeah, union activity had been marginalized and had been, subject to state attack and to right-wing attack like forces from the Klan, and there have been legendary spaces that were in the South doing the opposite kind of organizing. I don't know if folks are familiar with the Highlander Center, right? The Highlander Center was an organizing school in Tennessee that grew out of the labor movement in the South, right? In spite of the Klan activity and all the right-wing activity against it. And it became a training ground for civil rights workers, labor organizers, peace organizers, because we were moving into the Vietnam era and whatnot. It was a legendary space. There's still a minor it still exists, but not at the level that it did, and it stayed under attack. It stayed under attack. In fact, one of their offices were burnt down just within the last 10 years.
Right.
So that the whole notion of, what we got to hold back and where this thing can take us, the recession that we were in, right, speaks to that, needing to, or that wanting to step away from any kind of government regulation of these big corporations, right? Who did those recessions hurt? It hurt some of everybody, but in the end, who got bailed out to make the recession end? So we're told. The first thing they did, they bailed out the damn banks, who participated in the funding and the allowing of this kind of deregulation of these great big corporations and letting them get away with a whole lot of stuff and helping them make money in the process. So we got a lot to deal with.
And but Zaid, that's also part of what we are, right? And the reason why we have people who don't want to have those particular conversations, right? They want to keep our focus away from the real issues and the real ideas that Black folks should be dealing with. And I think that's why some folks have come into the realization more and more that this particular election is probably going to be one of the most important elections of the history of Black folks in this country, right? Only because we began to see that from a legal perspective where these folks are going, right? And the fact that they understand the power of the Supreme Court, right? So, that's what begins to happen as we begin to deal with what the realities are in this country. And the realities of what we are in this country is that white folk are clearly if you think about what Bill was just saying, you think about where white folks are in this country, they are clear exactly what time it is in America, and they are afraid that they're going to be losing to the majority of the people in this country, right? And they also know that they're not going to be the majority, right? So, and they already know that they're not having as many children as other groups in this country. So they see themselves losing power, and so the only way that and according to Bill, and we also know it's true, the only thing that they can really hold on to, Zaid, is their whiteness.
Yes.
Right? They've got to hold on to that, and that is the thing. That is the thing
that their privilege. Yes.
But that is the thing that pulls poor white folk and rich white folk together. What? Their whiteness. Right? And just like Jonathan said, when he went down to West Virginia, he saw them poor ass white folks, and they were acting like there was nothing wrong or nothing going on, right? And they were siding with those very people who hate the hell out of them.
That's right. That's right.
But the one commonality is the fact that they're white. That is the question I wanted to ask, Saeed. So when you were talking to Mother Baraka today, and I wrote this down. This whole conversation about mobilization versus organization, right? Because as you know, Kwame Ture talks about in his book Black Power, and he says that
We need to read his Ready for Revolution.
huh?
We need to read his Ready for Revolution. That's his 400 to 500 page epic book of him telling his story and how he moved, where he went, even past Black Power, to revolution. But go ahead. Yeah, your point is well taken.
So, but thank you. I'm gonna definitely look for that book next time I go down to the bookstore downtown. But so as you know in the book, he talks about black folk being great mobilizers,
Mm-hmm.
right? He said we can. I mean, nobody can mobilize better than black folks.
Mm-hmm.
The problem is that at one point we were also coming into the realization of being great organizers. We were organizing and putting that together. Now it seemed like all we are now is mobilizers.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. Now there's some differences. Now, like I said, now I lifted up this young brother. We both lifted up this young brother in Jersey City. This Councilman Gilmore. He was a young community organizer who decided he was going to up and run for city council at a time when folks were agitated, when they were mobilized. He seized the moment, right? There's a young sister that I tell you about. This young sister. We've had her on the show, right? That I wanted to bring up here from Tennessee, Amber Sherman. She's not just Black Lives Matter, but she's training young folks, who are in the Democratic Party, how to organize, not just to win elections, but to be, run community-based elections and be grounded in the community, right? How that, we're going to have power. It has to come from, the movement in the community, right? And that's what she's doing, So there's, some folks get it, but at this, there's questions about whether or not enough of us are at this particular moment. So we got to keep sounding the drum. We got to keep sharpening the contradictions, and we have to keep, demonstrating what we're trying to get folks to see.
Yeah, and so let me ask you: is she going to make it next week?
She's going to need some talking to.
Okay, yeah. So I mean, but that's a conversation.
Oh, I come get it. She said, "Oh, I ain't got time for this." She was fussing.
But that's a conversation we need to have, right? You know what I'm saying?
I know. That's what I was saying to her.
Yeah. I just think that's the conversation we need to have. But around this whole thing about organizing, voters and registering and began to talk about, see, but the problem is, Zaid, is it starts to sound like it did, in the last presidential election, right? It starts to sound like a fear tactic, right? Remember, we all understood what was happening under Donald Trump, right? And then everybody was like, yo, y'all know we got to get rid of this guy at all costs, right? But remember, Biden had promised some things, right? And remember, one of the biggest promises that he made, particularly to those young people, were that he was going to get rid of that college debt.
That's right.
Right? And that didn't happen. And young black folks are not as willing to give white folks a second chance like older black folks are. So them younger black folks are saying, man, I ain't going to vote in this goddamn, I ain't getting nothing in that last election. Well, that's not necessarily true, but that's what they say, right? Because the one thing they wanted was to be able to get from all of that college debt. And they weren't able to do it. So this time around, it's going to take a little bit more convincing. And the question is do we have a very black and white conversation, or do we have a racist conversation? In other words, what I'm saying is really show the real goal of some of these white Republicans. What is their real goal? What is the real end goal for these guys, right? Because remember, they it is about power, but it's also about them in their own mind holding on to what they believe is a white racist country, that they do not want to be black at all or to be told the truth from a black perspective.
Mhm.
But you know, and I'm just joining, so I had some assignments that I had to complete. Um, as I was coming in, um, I overheard Al Sharpton on the radio with a caller, and the caller was saying, in terms of negotiating, that he loved Maxine, Mother Maxine. He loves her, but
Maxine.
he, yes, he wants her. But in terms of representing and her vote, what I think they asked her, you know, because the speaker, he doesn't have the support in his own party right now. So if we need some things done, um, will some Democrats be able to come and make sure that he will be able to stay in position because his people are not backing him, and they're trying to remove him as speaker. That group of Republicans. And so a question came up that said, well, we can get what we want. Is there some Dems? And I think in the interview, and they asked Auntie Maxine, as they call her, would she support the speaker to ensure that he will be able to stay in position? And she said, under no condition would she support him. And I
Mm.
know in the beginning, um, Hakeem, he also said that
Hakeem,
when he first, go ahead, I'm sorry, you're
Hakeem,
clarifying, I know.
just the audience's benefit, as you were.
Yep. And he was saying once he got voted in and appointed to his position that we would not be supporting him. Now I haven't heard today what his position is, meaning now that it's clear that they're trying to remove him and get somebody in place that is more like that minority of Republicans and who want to do all of these things and they don't mind shutting down the government and everything. So negotiations, we have to, you know, we ask how do some people get some things and seem quicker than other people.
Mhm, mhm.
And we have to have the numbers in there. We have to make sure that we're voting at all costs. And what Trump was able to do in his 4 years in terms of that Supreme Court was like unbelievable.
Yeah.
But he was able to do it because when the time came, they were positioned to, you know, make some moves, and they did it.
Yeah,
And
that's right.
and we also have to remember. I know Congressman Payne went on the floor this afternoon to talk about the shutdown, and I wish we had that. But we have to stay.
Well, next,
Also, go ahead. I'm sorry.
no, we'll have them next week for sure. Come
Yep.
on.
But you know what? Next week is so far away with the dynamics and stuff.
Yes.
You
Mhm,
know,
mhm.
just think of, you know, everything that has happened just alone today. Right now, we're on the radio talking under a state of emergency. We had Diane Feinstein die this morning.
Mhm.
You know,
I didn't realize she was 90.
tomorrow.
Mhm. I didn't realize she was 90. And we were talking a few minutes
Yeah.
about your friend Senator Menendez. His
Right,
gold.
him. You
Yeah.
know, and what would you? What's I don't know if you said. What say you? I may Menendez. You know, you go into your house and you got boxes of money, gold bars. You know, you're weighing things down. You know, maybe he barely made it last time, so you don't have this weight.
Oh,
You
so hold up. Then we talking to the great former Councilwoman Donna K. Williams. Hold up a minute. Hold up. Hold up. Let me get you. Let me back you in your elected civic corner for a minute.
yes,
We're talking about the loss, another potential loss if we're not careful,
too.
of two Senate seats
Mm-hmm.
just behind these modern developments.
Hmm.
What do you think should the response should be to these developments? Now we know that the governor of California is going to appoint somebody to finish Feinstein's term, right?
Hmm.
That's definitely going to create a ripple in the
Hmm.
California order over
Right.
gunning for that seat coming from both sides of the fence, the Republican and the Democratic side.
And
And, and,
remember.
and if Menendez resigns or gets locked the hell up, if the chickens are
Hmm.
really coming home to roost for his behind, we got the same paradigm here, right?
Hmm.
How you think that's going to play out? What
Well,
what's Madam Donna Kay?
Well, I think we've already seen how it played out in California because we had that situation when the vice president was elevated to the seat of vice president. They had to um, put somebody in her place, and they put in Senator, I know his name, but I think he might have been the commissioner of education. So, like you said, there was a ripple effect. One person went, and so I'm confident that the governor of California is going to appoint somebody who is positioned and ready to go. We've seen him do it with, again, when Senator, now Vice President Kamala Harris, ascended to the seat of the vice president. For New Jersey, I believe that we have a tremendous leadership in Chairman Jones, and Chairman Jones has had, unfortunately, some appointments that came definitely unplanned, and I know that he's probably ready, and I'm sure he's having a lot of meetings and telling him it's time. So
Tell him
I
it's time.
Menendez,
Yeah, yeah.
I'm sure.
Mhm.
I'm sure we've all had a chance to meet our chairman of the Democratic Party in New Jersey, so he's not lost for words, and 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 we hope that the conversations will continue as a family discussion and not a discussion that has to be played out, and in this his colleagues have already, and now we see it slowly happening. First his colleagues, and then the governor has even spoken, and you will continue to see it get closer and closer to home. And we don't know at what point Menendez will make a decision, but we hope he does it sooner than later. And I did not. You had labor on prior, and labor, I'm sure, have supported Menendez. Did labor, when you had labor on earlier, did they say anything about their position for Menendez?
Actually, we didn't talk. We didn't get a chance to talk about that with him. We needed a few more
Okay.
minutes with him. We started a little late with him. He
Okay.
got on a few minutes late, and then he had to go and deal with a commitment with his family.
Right.
That was some of the places that we should go. But no, but let's come on back. I won't
Uh,
press you no more.
oh, come on.
Right? We got the great Lawrence Ham who said he's going to run for that seat.
Hmm.
Right? Andy Kim from South Jersey, from Ocean
Hmm.
County, said he wants to see
Hmm.
whatnot. I'm sure there are others who probably itching to get at it and whatnot. But how does Madam Donna Kay think about how that seat should be filled? Who's best suited to fill that seat so we're protecting all of our interests and all of our rights?
Okay, I think that both of those persons that you just mentioned, good. I will be putting my support behind Chairman Ham, but you have both two people who have served New Jersey well. But we see in our community from the top of New Jersey down to the tip of New Jersey how Chairman Ham does the work, and you see how consistent he has been doing the work um, in a grassroots organization that's unpaid,
Totally volunteer,
that
right?
totally volunteer, that he served in while he was fully employed, putting um, his babies through college and everything, showed up every Thursday for a 3 hour and a 2.5 hour, then some
Oh, wow.
meeting could turn into, yeah, and he's meeting all the way to he get in his car type of meeting, and if and he's dropping you off, he's still meeting while he's in his car. So I have had the opportunity to see that firsthand. So of course I know what he is capable and what he will do. This would be, more, it's he's ready, and he's been ready. He's still probably, it would be interesting to see how the person who still probably holds the title of being the youngest elected person. Is it elected or appointed? Newark School Board is elected.
It's
And
elected now, but it was appointed then. He was
so he was appointed by Gibson, but
appointed.
he was still the youngest person serving on a school board
Right.
um, to this day. And that was in the 60s, correct?
That was
60s,
early.
early 70s, early
Yeah.
70s.
Mhm.
So, with that being said, it's he's been doing it, and his record will speak. And it's funny, and I'll take a sidebar and say, if we're giving out our resume, try to make it tight and try to do it in one page, maybe two. How do you fit that body of work into 2 pages? Is
Mhm.
it possible?
Mhm.
Is it possible?
In some cases, it isn't because it's just so much.
It's so much.
Well, I'm actually another one that's a little more off the radar, but I'm
Mhm.
very interested in, it, and I think we should all should give it a serious look.
Mhm.
Right? She's a hellraiser,
Mhm.
left, right?
Mhm.
And I like the kid a lot. Sue Altman is
Mhm.
Congress.
Mhm.
Sue Altman, who put a big charge in the battery of Workers Family Party, is running against Tom Kaine Jr.
Mm. Okay.
Right? I want folks to pay attention to that, right?
Mhm.
Because that's a radical young white woman, right? Who would fit right in with
Mhm.
the AOCs and the Cory Bushes and what she would fit right, even though she's white, she would fit
Mhm.
right in with them ideologically and politically,
Mhm.
right?
Mhm.
Running against a Republican from old money. Tom Kaine Jr. is an old money Republican
Right.
who's considerably to the right of his family's history,
Mhm.
right? He comes from a moderate to liberal Republican tradition with his
Mhm.
father going back, very education centered, very pro affirmative action and civil rights. For all of his Republicanness, Tom
Mhm.
Kaine did have that with him. He totally
Right.
went away from these crazy people running around with trying to out Trump. Right? There's a difference.
Mhm.
And this junior boy is willing to go ride with that tide instead of dealing
Mhm.
with the integrity of his own roots.
Right.
You
And
have
it
any thoughts about that?
no, I would say it would be Sue with no hesitation, and the Republican Party is not the Republican Party that we grow up knowing. And at one time, I can see right here in New Jersey, why we say we're a blue state. We know people right here, um, Whitman, got right behind Whitman. We had the whole clergy, endorse her at black clergy, let me say,
Hmm.
endorse her, when it was.
And Christopher when he was up for
And
reelection.
yeah, so and for all of that they say that, and particularly Essex County, being Democrat, they have stepped, and when they saw that there was a Republican who they thought was a better fit, they did it. But that's not, you wouldn't line a Christine Whitman up, and I don't even know if you would line a Governor Chris Christie up with those Republicans. And while he's not saying much, I know he
Well, he
really
called
would separate.
Donald Duck.
Okay, now he's back to Chris. But when he should have been doing it more when he was in office, Chris Christie was very tight-lipped about how Trump was serving, and while one would say he was not trying not to be disrespectful to the seat of the presidency, I think that Donald Trump disrespected the seat of the presidency himself, so nobody else could do that. As a matter of fact, on the Sharpton show, that was one of the things that they were saying. You would think with these indictments that he would even want to take his family's name and um and keep it. He's getting ready. everything. He's willing to throw everything down the toilet just to, I don't know. And it is horrible. And the young, I think something's going on in Chicago that we're missing. There's so much going on with Donald Trump that you can't even keep up in terms of how much stuff is going on. And I think that
You don't believe this is political persecution? He's winning. He's ahead by big numbers.
big
Big
numbers,
numbers. You
right?
know how you talk.
In spite of and even and you look back
Terrible thing
to
was happening in our country. Terrible thing. Terrible
right.
thing.
But look what even when the terrible things was happening when Nixon and there was a phone call they say and they're like you can resign or get impeached, right? And what did he do? He resigned. So that it's a total different Republican Party today, and even how um, they would want their legacy to go on. They're ready to, just continue after this person and why. And I'll give it back to you. Why do you think that these people, for all just because they, like you said, it's for one reason to stay in a place of what they think is power?
Privilege.
That's the only reason.
Mm-hmm.
Sup- to be in a superior or what they consider to be a superior position. But like I was saying, that I want us as a community to be more civically engaged and to stay focused and voting. Our young people get it together and take us over the winning line this year. And what's the first thing the Republicans wanted to do? They want to raise the voting age. And I
Mm-hmm.
hope they see things like that. That just because you came out and voted, now they want to take your vote away. And if we don't pay attention, that could be something that would be something that would happen.
Yeah, and in fact, it is happening. Over 19 states have changed their voter registration laws, right, deliberately to make the vote less accessible.
Right.
To black folks, to folks who speak another language, to brown folks. That's real stuff that's in the mix, and they have a Supreme Court to back up their legal machinations to try and make this undermining something systemic and real and ongoing,
And
right?
we can't even be hospitable while you voting. So you can stand in
Uh,
Atlanta heat, in Georgia heat for 3 hours, but nobody can bring you a bottle of water if you choose to stand online for 3 hours.
Crazy stuff.
Yep.
Crazy,
Crazy but
right?
real. But real.
Exactly. And that was from a vote.
Mhm.
That is based on a vote. And when you have people like Marjorie Green and them continuing, I don't know if you got a chance to talk about that. They actually had a hearing yesterday on about impeaching Biden.
Mhm. Mhm.
They didn't get together to vote about keeping the
Mhm.
government
Government
open.
going. Right. Mhm.
They met about impeaching Biden. So
Tit for
you
tat.
we
Mhm.
yeah, and you have heard Congressman Payne say that the Republicans um, stay very focused and they're about five things that they want to vote, and now it's four because now they move a little bit further on getting abortion illegal, right? So that's check. We've Roe versus Wade almost totally overturned.
Mhm.
So that was one of their five things they have been working on since it passed. So now they got four more to do. And where he says, whereas Democrat, the heart of our country will take on the concerns of the whole United States, which makes it uh, a bigger goal to cross because it's always changing.
Mhm.
What's the need, today? What's the need today? And they care about your needs. And people don't pay attention to that. But if we continue to stay engaged and vote and know what you're voting about, that's really important. Very, very important.
But Donald, Don and Zaid, let me ask you a question. Do y'all really? I don't. I mean, I'm asking y'all because I don't know if I really feel it. Do you really think that our people are engaged right now politically?
I think the differences are regional. I think there are in the various spaces where you see the most backwardness on the right wing side and the Republican side. You also see mobilization and organization on our folks' side. There is our folks did turn out in the South enough to beat Biden in 2020, right? And
Right.
Mhm.
that again. Now the question is, do we see it up here like we see it down south? That's a different question,
Mhm.
right? I have my concerns about what I don't see here. We see our black and brown Democrats backpedaling on the few good things that we have that are our law because they're scared of the Republicans and they're
Mhm.
scared of
Mhm.
the police union. Instead of standing firm and uniting on what got their behinds there in the first place. You know, they're more operating out of fear than
Mhm.
trying to lead the way you're supposed to lead. That's
And
my
yeah, and when you're hungry and when you have so much, um, you were talking when you have so much to be concerned about, like food, paying the rent, it keeps you um struggling and keeps your mind your eye off of the off of the goal. So we have to, and that's where grassroots organizations come in, and we're consistent. One of Ruby D, she did a poem about women, and part of her, if you would call it the chorus of the poem, she kept saying, don't forget to bring your lunch. So you have to, there's a reason we have a meeting and we're serving fried chicken and things like that, because we want people to be able to um, bring their children, and so they don't have to worry about getting a babysitter. You want to be able to give them a square meal if you're bringing them out, to make sure that when they go home, they don't have to still cook a meal. And it's important. Those little things that people may think are nuanced and not important are really important, and there's a whole method to it. Um, because people can't, if you're at home and you got you're one household parent, it's hard to be at a 6 p.m., go to work, be at a 6 p.m. meeting, and go back, do homework and all of that. So those grassroots organizations who help keeping those things going are really, really important in how they do things. So I think that if the more we can help our grassroots organizations stay afloat to keep the people informed and engaged, is something that we should be mindful of.
Yeah, but the question is, Donna, are there really, because that was one of the conversations Zaid and I was talking about, mobilization versus organization. The question is, are there really that many grassroots organizations that are on the ground right now? Right. And because we're great mobilizers, right?
Hmm.
But even here in the city of Newark, think about what organizations are really moving on the ground in a very real way politically that you can name other than pop. Who?
I would say, and you would see pop. I would say Keisha Yuri's Nork. Is it Nork Anti-Violence? Are they still working under that, or um, the organizations that she's
See,
doing?
here's the thing. You don't even know if they're moving. See, that's why you
No,
asking
I
all.
know that she's moving. I'm just trying to think what's the what organization, what would be the name of the organization. That's what I can't get right off the top of my head. I do know that they're doing the work and they're moving.
Right.
We were sitting here with a loss for on the school board. And she learned when she was on last week or the week before last, she named a whole list of things that they're doing. So I know
Mhm.
we just named two. I'm very confident that in our Latino down in the Ironbound Association. I know they're doing the work because I know, unfortunately, if I have to pick up the phone and need help with somebody being removed from their house, as hard as with another task or two more tasks on her list, Maria is picking up the phone. And
Mhm.
so the work is that's three that I can name right there. And so that would be our iron bow section. That would be over at the police station. That was the and what did I just see? As I start thinking about him, I know that in his first term, um, Councilman Dupree, he's doing, even partnering with um, Councilman who we partner with in East Orange and doing for the young people. He's reaching out, and this is his first term in the West Ward. And Councilman Dupree is making sure that the police are on the streets, cleaning up the areas that need to be cleaned. You can see this, and I'm not saying it because he sent out a memo. I can say I can ride through and see evidence of what Councilman Dupree is doing. So I know that the work is being done. I think that the communication is not in the same manner of how we used to get information out, and so I think the
Mhm.
information is so dicey that we don't know. But I've just named four where I can say off the top of my head. And I'm glad you asked that because I just know I printed some things out, the African American Chamber of Commerce for the state of New Jersey, and that's brother um, John, that we have to get him back on the show. But he's doing a whole training on preparing um, our households for when our loved ones leave us. So there's another organization doing the work.
Mhm.
Um, so I think we are. I just think that it's little pockets, and we have to be better of communicating and telling each one reach one, as our beloved Lieutenant Governor would say. Each That was her tagline. Each one reach one. Lieutenant uh, Sheila Oliver, Governor Sheila Oliver. That each one reach one, and even the current Lieutenant Governor, she just had her first initiative. So yes, and I think we are doing the work. Where you show up, you have created a program, Ed, that you have a team that we show up, and now you have gotten into the place where you have enough where that at one point you had to be here every weekend, but at least you have expanded the resources that occasionally you could take a day off now. So how long has All Politics Are Local been on
I don't
air,
even,
been around?
I don't even want to tell you because we're getting old. I don't
Okay.
even.
So there you go. But
Yeah,
you've been here consistently and you have
15
a
years.
body of work. Yes.
Yeah,
How many
you know,
years?
15, right?
15
Going on
years.
15 years. Yeah,
Yes.
but
And
but but the thing is though, Donna, what you know, and I'm saying for all of us, right? That's
hmm
everybody that contributes to this work politically. What I think though is that and that's why I was asking Zaid about mobilization versus organization.
Mhm.
Because what I think is that we've got to if we're going to survive the next presidential election, we've got to be organized politically like we've never been organized before, right?
right.
Because I just don't I me personally I don't feel that our people are motivated right now.
Was
Right?
I
I
let me
don't
ask
feel
it, was I you in your current position right now, you're not
which
just
part.
here. But I'm saying what you're doing right now, you've been blessed to hit several you're seeing different communities doing different things. So how do you feel? Our grassroots organization, you've been Cuba, you've been you've been to New Orleans, you've been to Tulsa, you've seen some of our our most diverse communities. What do you see?
Well, I think I alluded to it already. I think it was our people coming out and enough of our young people responding to the challenge of 2020 that did come out in the South, right? And
Hmm
we beat Trump. It did come out, there was some close calls in certain places in the North,
hmm
Philadelphia, Michigan, and whatnot. Uh, You know, with that crazy. What's the crazy Republican as corrupt as Menendez, and
Mhm.
he won't resign in New York,
Oh, the
right?
that just got elected.
Santo,
His
Santo.
name. Hmm.
If we had more folks turn out in that particular district, we wouldn't be dealing with that goofball. You
Right.
know, uh, so there's work to be done. We can't even though we won in 20, meaning we beat Trump, right?
Hmm.
Uh, we can't take for granted that we're going to win again just because he's
Hmm.
a nut,
Right.
because he's an organized nut
Hmm.
and his base is fully mobilized. We cannot take for granted that he's not. That was a mistake that was made in 16 when Hillary lost,
Yeah.
right?
Right.
And one of the things that happened, we'll come back to something that Ed brings up too, because some of this is not just it's not just our folks not coming out, but it's also some mistakes that the Democratic Party makes
Right.
in the taking for granted of the black vote and not putting
Right.
resources that it has
Right.
into our community
That's
on both
right.
the nation question and then after elections into our community, into our organizations. That's the piece that we need to be dealing with
Yeah.
uh, nationally, and that's the piece that we need to be dealing with in this area.
And I think, yeah, Ed, you had the privilege of talking to Donna Brazil, and was it after Barack? Whatever was it during Barack or Hillary's? But I think it is even during President Obama when she was in Brooklyn, and and she's
Mhm.
like begging for money, and I can recall going to get posters locally at a headquarters, and they were like the posters that we wanted to hang up, and they're like they're $2 a piece. We like, huh?
Mhm.
And the Democratic Party has to stop that. That's stop. And what do creating these big war chests of money and not spending them when they need to be spent? And
Mhm.
I think I've always been a fan of when it comes to election and bringing out the vote. The best recipe to me is put that money in the community. After Jan, when you get within 6 months of that vote, open those campaign headquarters because that means jobs. You're gonna to have somebody sitting at that desk answering that phone. That job for 6 months is better than not having a job for 12 months. So I think that's something that they need to get back to the basics, and just that visualization. We've seen it in what Mahogany is a good time, a good movie where you see the campaign headquarters because Billy D was running for office. But to see that visualization, and I'm watching The Shy, and the writer of The Shy, she did a big whole thing on an election in Chicago, and walking into a campaign headquarters and things like that. But that's a big thing, and stop and to say that you people don't know the difference of people look when you go open your campaign headquarters. I've ran to God be glory 3 successful campaigns, and I can tell you people ask, okay, I will volunteer, but at what point can you hire me? That's a
Mhm.
question that really comes up during election time, and you
Mhm.
want to be able to hire people, and you just don't want people to be constantly working for free.
Right.
That's not
Especially
something
when the
that we
money
can
is there to pay 'em.
stabilize.
That's right. Especially when the money is there to pay him. Madam
Right.
Donna, did you go down to DC,
No,
CBC week?
we gonna be ready next year.
Oh,
All
you didn't go?
glory. No, because in year one, there's a simple. When you're in a new position, year one, you sit down and you get your time and stuff together. But get 2 years of sick leave, old school. You got to get your time and everything. So I'm getting my time and everything together. And next year, I will have a bus of babies going down um, the CBC. But I'm excited that Congressman Payne, the cruise is back floating down the Potomac, and I can't wait to hear him talk about the cruise. Um, I'm sure it was a challenge because his mentor wasn't there in the means of lieutenant governor, but Sheila Oliver. But it's time, that's one of the best. Have bragged about it, annual legislative conferences, and I'm going to speak it into existence that all politics are local next year. Third week of September, will be broadcasting live from Washington,
Uh
D.C.
oh. Uh oh. Uh oh.
2024.
That's
Coming to you
envisioning.
live.
You're speaking it into existence.
That's right.
That's that's not
We're
that's
gonna
not a
have our house. We all gonna be we're gonna get like a 4 bedroom, 5 bed. We probably do like a 6 bedroom or a 10 bedroom. And that when we come back from the conference, so you get back in like 9 o'clock at night. Ed, you gonna hold a meeting from 9:30 to ten
Uh oh.
thirty. So we ready
Wait.
to go next morning, and you're gonna have some orders that I need you to go to this. I need you to be in this session. I need you to be in this session. It's gonna be good. And
Down, down.
we're gonna plug into Fatim's set, and we got the audio and everything. He told you this. He told you when we interviewed him and who did we interview him with? He said come. He said come on down. So we gonna call him and tell him we'll be there. We've been there continuously by the way of DJ Rhino for the last couple of years, but we will be there in full. The full all politics of our local staff will be in DC 2024.
Well, Donna, from your mouth to God's ears, you might as well go ahead and write the
Okay,
budget for that right now. You know what I mean?
that's
You know,
right.
write the
Hmm.
budget so we can see what it looks like and then lay it out because you already spoke it. You know exactly
That's,
what every day is going to look like. You know what I
that's
mean?
right.
Just put it together. And make it happen. But what was the theme this year though? What was it really about? I mean, what was the theme?
This I can tell you. I sent everybody in July that let's just save that for next week, and when Congressman is on, we can do all
Okay.
of that. But I do with I let Rhino didn't join us. I want to tell you
He said he had a family crisis tonight, by the way.
crisis. Yeah, but people don't know that we are under a state of emergency, and I don't know if anybody has seen the pictures in Hoboken. Hoboken look like the Jersey Shore
What do you mean the
right
flood?
now. Oh, yeah, Hoboken and parts of
Yeah.
Jersey City is underwater.
Wow.
That it's like the Jersey Shore. Down there, that water where Hoboken and areas of Jersey City. Well, can come in. Um, Down there is something. I seen it one time, but now that 280, they have that bridge. So 280 is very high over the Hackensack River. It's
Right.
not as effective, but that lower area, Jersey City. But I have to tell you, at 2 o'clock in the morning, I got up because the 50 anniversary of hip hop, 50
Mhm.
years anniversary, and this was the Grammy one and Busta Rhymes and the whole set. But Busta Rhymes, I don't know if y'all seen that one. I'm gonna send the link. He had the red jacket on, and he started. And Busta said, "Y'all think I'm coming to play?" And he came, and oh, that era of hip hop is not to be played with. But what I to see him perform at the level he performed, and then to see like Jay Z in the audience and the smiles on their face, like yeah, that's our time, and to see they celebrate each other, it's a very beautiful thing, and to hear them and they're ready to mentor and to make sure that there's another 50 years of going on of hip hop. 50, I'm telling you. And what's that? The message. Don't push me. I'm close to the edge, and I can't think of which one. He just
Yeah, yeah.
always he can hold it up against the young people. He ripping off his shirt, and he's like, And I'm
Cool.
like, you better go ahead, old
Isn't that
school. And
Grandmaster Flash?
yeah,
That's Grandmaster Flash.
that's light skin is Grandmaster Flash.
I think that light skinned dude is Grandmaster Flash. I think that's him. But what were you saying? You saw this performance or
Yeah,
something?
yeah. So I'm gonna send the link out to everybody. But the different, if anybody, here's what I will say: if there's something going on in your area, 50 honoring the 50 years of hip hop. Go. Don't waste your time. It's not a waste of money. They are showing up, and it's the best ticket this year.
Mm.
Anything celebrating the 50 years of hip hop, go out. And yeah, LL Cool J, he came out with his radio, the big box. He's like, LL is still, it's just, the performance is beautiful. Missy Elliott, Missy Elliott is something who's somebody who's all through her ages of performing for our community. She has been dealing with a sickness, but she is doing her thing. And Monica, not my Brandy. Remember 10 years ago, Brandy and them did a remake of If You Want to Be Down. Now, this year, Brandy, her, and Erica Badu did another spin of If You Want to Be Down.
Mm.
Brandy is a grown woman now. And listen, I'll tell you, it's something to be said. So I can't wait to Rhino talk about what has been going on. And like I had a chance to run into Eric's sermon, and he said that he doesn't need to be. I asked him, I said, I seen you at a couple but not many. He said, no, we're not trying to be. They're kind of splitting it up,
Mm.
and everybody's doing a little, but they're more, that group who are in that 50 years, they want to push the younger rappers to the forefront, and that's Busta Rhyme, and they're all kind of on the same page with that. And I can't think who's Pretty Boy, the rapper, dark skin. He always dancing. He came out with his nice powder blue Louis Vuitton suit. I can't even think right now, but
Mm.
Big Daddy Kane, yeah, Big Daddy Kane, was always cool with it. So he was and he got with his too. He always got his dancer. And even MC Light, she came out, mate. MC Light was doing it. So I like how they're splitting the venues up and everybody's doing a little and everybody's trying to do everything.
Right.
And then they also always have the young artists as a part of it. So it's a big vision. And
Mm.
so
And all these were the performers that performed at this year.
No, this was the one show. There's many shows. There's so many shows going on.
Right.
So there's shows going on throughout the year. I think this was the Grammy one, but I'll send you the link out and we'll talk about it more after you see it. But the energy that comes from it, I was asleep in 2 a.m. and I'm like jumping up because then once you hear that song that always hits you. Everybody has their one song. For me, it's probably um, I'm a big fan of Big Daddy Kane, big fan of LL, and you could picture yourself with LL talking about my radio or um, talk about my big earrings, walking down the street. You
You
could
was
just kind of
around. You was around the
round
way.
away girl. Exactly. See how that 2 a.m. thing coming, but it's beautiful. So I think, and I have to tell you, I'm a person that goes to the Essence Fest, that era of hip hop maintains. They keep their numbers in. They can fill up an audience with no problem.
Mhm.
So we have to, but and but we talked about Diane Feinstein and just wanted her service because before the speaker the form who's the Republican? He's been sick for a while and kind of blacking out in the middle of his speeches.
Kind of, yeah.
Yeah, and um, Sinister Feinstein, she had the same. She was in the middle of a speech probably about a month ago, and the same thing happened. So we see that she pretty much
She said
went
she
out.
before she passed, or what happened to Donna? Poor thing, she went off. Donna, oh, there you
Yeah,
go.
I'm still here. Yeah, it's just a.
Donna went the green screen on us.
You see that? She the green screen that you got to be still. You got to teach me about that, Ed. But that's
Yeah,
what
I
the
know.
thing.
I
But
know.
you got to sit still. But
Mm.
she was speaking and she lost her place and she just froze. Period. She was sitting down at a hearing and She did it before McConnell did it. So,
She's 9 years older than O'Connell. She was 90. I didn't realize that she was that old.
and how old is McConnell?
He's 80. He's 81.
And Mitt Romney came right after that happened. Mitt Romney came out and said, "I will not be running anymore, and if I did, I will be in the mid 80s. It's time for us to prepare the young people."
Hmm. Hmm.
But Ed is the top of the hour, and
Yep.
as they used to say on New Year's, Watchman, Watchman, what is it of the hour?
Wow. Go ahead, Donna. Donna, you just speaking all kind of glory tonight. Gotta
Let's
watch you. You know what I mean? Yeah. Hey, listen, y'all. We had a great show. So uh definitely want to thank all of our guests tonight. Zaid, you want to thank that sister who came on first
Oh, that's
from
Tony Erwin. Well, love and support for Tony and her family.
Mhm.
Justice for Drew. We're gonna be out there October 12th, 14th, and the 22nd for the National Day of Action Against Police Brutality. I'm proud of
Mhm.
how that family is holding together in the midst of a whole lot of pain, whole lot of trauma, and a very big and senseless tragedy.
Yep. And so
Bill
we all
Fletcher, and thank Bill Fletcher. He came.
yep. Want to thank Bill.
Yeah,
Uh,
Bill, good stuff, good stuff. And I
Great.
miss Kamau. I miss Kamau. I was hoping we'd have got Kamau, and Kamau would have came in right in the middle of Bill's conversation. That would have
Mhm.
been a great conversation because Kamau does some good stuff.
Yep. So we missed Kamal tonight, but we thank all of our guests, and of course we thank all of the hosts. Thank you, Brother Zaid. Thank you, Donna, and thank John for coming through. And of course myself, I'm Ed
What's
Riley.
tomorrow? You gonna lift up tomorrow?
So yeah, so you want go ahead, Zaid. You can just go ahead and talk.
I got something else to lift up.
Okay, so tomorrow, y'all, is going to be the men's conference that's going to take place tomorrow in the city of Newark.
Mhm.
It's the men's meeting that our Mayor Raz J. Baraka, here in the great city of Newark, New Jersey, hosts.
Mhm.
So it's going to take place tomorrow at the Robert Treat Hotel at 50 Park Place in the city of Newark, New Jersey. It's going to start at 10 o'clock. Breakfast is going to be from 9 a.m. to 10. So if
Mhm.
you want breakfast, please get there at 9 so you can fellowship with the brothers, have something to eat, and then at 10 o'clock we're going to go live with the program. This year's guest is going to be Charlemagne the God.
Woo! All
So that
right.
should be an interesting conversation. And the focus of the conversation, from what I understand from the mayor, is going to be mental health, right?
Wow.
As you
Mhm.
all know, Charlemagne the God has not been afraid to talk about his mental health issues and the fact that he had to go and get help.
Okay.
So we're going to discuss that. As you know, the mayor
I didn't
likes to
know
talk
for him.
about the heaviness that is on the brothers in the city of Newark, which prevent us from being able to move forward in our
Right.
own lives and to move forward personally and professionally. So that's tomorrow, 10 a.m., Robert Treat Hotel.
Right.
Well, the thing I got to lift up is the Lombe Brass, his organization that he had many, many years ago, AJAZ, the African Jazz Association and Society from the 1950s that gave us the Naturally Yours, Black is Beautiful contest that gave us Black is Beautiful back in 1962 is going to be honored with a street renaming in the Bronx, right around the same time. So I will miss y'all tomorrow. I gotta go pay tribute to a brother who was one of my teachers and was a great. The other was the dean of Pan Africanism of Harlem. You
Mm.
know, in the post Malcolm era. It was very special. He was a very special brother. Him and his brother, and then that whole organization they had under the late great Carlos Cooks, Mr. Garvey's heir in Harlem. So I'll
Okay.
be there tomorrow.
Oh, Mr. Marcus Garvey's son, you saying?
No, it's not his son.
Uh-huh.
Carlos Cooks took over the UNIA, Garvey's
Okay.
organization, uh,
Mm-hmm.
in the 40s after Garvey, had left
Okay.
he went from States to Jamaica to England, and in the 40s he passed in 40. Carlos Cook stepped up and with the organization in Harlem.
Okay. Mhm.
And Donna, you have any announcements you want to make?
No, I just would ask everybody to go to their website and Google the African American Chamber of Commerce of New Jersey and tag it with John Harmon to make sure that you have the right organization. African American Chamber of Commerce of New Jersey.
We've had
John
him on, haven't we?
Yeah, John's been on. We got to have him back on. But right now, they're preparing to do a webinar so you can sign in on estate planning. And it's something that we all have to do, whether you plan for it or not. So please Google that page and we'll put it up on our uh, All Politics Are Local Facebook page. I'll send it to you, Ed. But we have to start being great stewards of our community. And the best way to do that is to have a plan.
Yep. Indeed.
That's a mouthful. That's a mouthful. Well said, Madam Don. Okay.
Well, again, we want to thank you all for tuning in to All Politics Are Local right here every Friday from 6 to 9 p.m. on All Politics Are Local. We thank y'all. It is America's number one political hip hop radio talk show. As my brother Zaid likes to say, we'll catch y'all where, Zaid?
Whirlwind.
In the world.
Right. Don't stop.